Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Community Scrutiny Group, and Happy New Year to everyone, even though it's nearly February now, but I know last time we met was back in November, and you're laughing at me for saying Merry Christmas, but see, time does fly when you're having fun. So thank you for everyone joining us tonight, and to everyone watching us on YouTube. Just going to do a quick round of introductions to the people who are perhaps watching for the first time, although if you are, you don't know what you've been missing for the last few months. So I'm Councillor Jonathan Wheeler, I'm Chairman of the Community Scrutiny Group. We've got Councillor Val Bansal, who's the Vice Chairman of the Community Scrutiny Group. We've got Councillor Gary Dickman, Councillor Leo Healy, Councillor Rod Jones, Councillor Richard Malander, Councillor Rex Walker, and Councillor Gareth Williams, and we'll have Councillor David Sims joining us shortly. In terms of the officer team, we've got probably more officers than councillors tonight, which is always good. So we have, as always, man who's really in charge. So David Banks is the Executive Manager, and one of the Deputy Chief Executives, and then we've got Peter Linfield, who's Executive Manager for Finance, here with us for the first report, again one of the Deputy Chief Executives. We've got Leanne Ashmore, who's the Executive Manager of Transformation, who's joining us for one of the items as well. We've got Jeff Carpenter, who I did see join us, and Jeff will be here for one of the items as well later on. We've got Derek Hayden, who's the Service Manager for Communities. And we've got Sam, who's joining us from East Midlands Councils. I saw popped up on the list, and I know I've missed someone who I'll get told off. Laura, who's actually running the meeting for me in the background, and we've got Ellen Tambrini also from Democratic Services, who's in the background as well. So thank you for everyone joining us this evening. So before further ado, let me do the housekeeping. Hopefully everyone knows where the toilets and the exits are in their own households. Otherwise, we've got more children than we think. So we'll go to number one, which is apologies for absence, Laura.
No apologies, Chairman.
Great, that's a good start. So item number two is declarations of interest. Anyone wants to declare interest in any item? Councillor Bansal.
Yes, declaration of interest regarding Edwalton Golf Course, living nearby.
Thank you, Councillor Bansal, and for myself as well. Item 4, Edwalton Golf Course Strategic Review. So I'm declaring a non-pecuniary interest. Speaking to the monitoring officer, I probably didn't need to, but I want to be absolutely transparent with people who are perhaps watching. So I do live in Edwalton, although I'm not anywhere near the golf course itself, on the other side of the estate. So Val doesn't have to come around and give me a cup of sugar in the morning if I run out. I also have been involved with the golf course before. I was one of the representatives from the Borough Council on the committee of the golf course that was obviously working with the members and the team running it, on the working party, which on the future of the golf course, which you'll refer to, which disbanded 2.5 years ago, and that time does fly, I think, in that one. So the monitoring officer is that she's absolutely fine for me to chair the meeting, to participate and to vote. But like I said, I just wanted to be absolutely transparent with everyone here this evening and watching in terms of interest in that item. I'm also the county council of the area, but again, that has no impact on the item. It's also worth saying for anyone watching who might be thinking, in terms of what we're doing here tonight, making decisions. Obviously, the scrutiny group, we're not a policy making decision. We are going to be scrutinising the items tonight, and we make recommendations to the cabinet or to full council. So that's where we are this evening. So hopefully everyone's okay with that. Anyone, any questions or objections to anything that we've just said, myself and Councillor Bansal? Not seeing hands go up, so we'll take that as okay. Right, any other declarations of interest? Not seeing any, so great. So item number 3, minutes of the last meeting. So I had a chance to read through it. Any questions or comments they wish to make? Speak now, forever hold your peace. Not yet. Everyone's saying they're okay. That's a great. So if everyone's okay, I will virtually sign them. Laura's probably got my signature down by now and explains my bank balance is going down, but there we go. So I'll basically sign it when I'm able to do so. That takes us then into item number 4, which is the Edwalton Golf Course Strategic Review. Dave, are you saying anything before we kick off, or do we hand over to Pete?
Happy, Chair, to be handed straight over to Peter Linfield, who's going to intro the item. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Peter, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just check you can all hear me.
Yep. Can hear that.
Yep, good. So I've got a few technical issues, which is the way, unfortunately, when you certainly because I'm living in Stoke-on-Trent, so it's a bit further for the old internet. Yeah, so I mean, only a brief introduction. Claire McLeod's going to talk through the findings of the work for that Knight, Kavanagh and Page have undertaken, which is basically an independent view on the best, as they say it, is the best way forward regarding the golf course. really focusing on what the main opportunities and challenges are. Clearly, there's been much discussion with various reports to Cabinet on the way forward with regards to the golf course over the certainly last few years. And in January 2020, it was agreed to consider golfing need, so given the poor financial viability of the golf course, and thereafter, what are the options for use of the site? Claire will now present her findings. Derek Hayden has also been working on this project, so he's going to be controlling the presentation, and so it's a bit of a double act. And also along with Claire, he's available to answer questions. I'm pleased to see Daryl's also on this particular call. So Daryl knows, obviously, Daryl Birch is in charge of the contract side of things, so he has quite a bit of involvement on the contract with Edwalton. So if there's any particular questions in relation to that, Daryl's here, and as well as Dave Banks, of course, as the executive manager. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Claire.
Thank you very much. The screen has gone blank at the moment, so can everyone else see it? Can everyone see the presentation?
Yeah.
Right, for some reason I can't at all. So I'm not sure why that should happen. I'll just open my own presentation, is probably the best thing. So my apologies for that. I've no idea why that's happened, because that's it should be okay, shouldn't it? Oh, here we go. Sorry, there we go. Right, so that's me. So yeah, forgive my Chris Whitty style remarks, but if we move on, I'm asking Derek to. So KKP, an independent consultancy. We've been around since 1992, and we've done extensive work on feasibility studies across the entire sporting sector. And golf in particular over the last few years, really, as more and more golf commissions have occurred. If we just move on, it's just going to show you some of the, and again, we can move on from that and we'll get into the, so I think it's important just to let you know, I've split the presentation into basically 3 sections. And I think it's probably better to wait until the end of the first section and I'll take questions. Then there's another section, questions, and then finally take any further questions there. Obviously, the facility we're talking about is Edwalton Golf Centre, which is contracted to Glendale Golf and is sublet to Lex Leisure. There's a separate members club on the site. You've got 2 9-hole courses, one of which is a standard hole course and one is a par 3 course, and a very small 6-bay driving range in the clubhouse. And it's always worth just putting the context around that. So you can see the site in front of you. It's obviously quite a linear site, 42.7 hectares for old school, 105 acres. And it's just relatively long and narrow, but it's obviously bordered by the A52. And that's pretty much all there's to be said about that. So the actual work that we undertook was into 2 sections, really. The first element is what's called a needs assessment, and this is to evaluate whether golf is surplus to requirements. The second element is the feasibility study, and I'll come on to that. So the evaluation of whether golf is surplus to requirements is not around the finances of the club. It's around the number of golf courses in the area, the supply, and it's about how many people are playing golf and the demand for golf in the area. We understand there's a planning imperative, and we understand that there's a need for housing and there's pressure on sort of the area for house building. We're also aware of the downward trend of the financial position of the course, and there's been a general downward trend in participation both locally and nationally. That was prior, funnily enough, to COVID, and actually COVID has provided an absolute boost for golf. And when we reopen, I actually suggest that there will be a massive increase in golf, but golf courses need to be ready to take on that opportunity, really, because it is an opportunity. So although we undertook the consultation prior to the COVID lockdown, and obviously things have changed since then. So that's the supply and demand analysis. And then out of that, we come with some recommendations. And then we followed it with a feasibility study, which is fundamentally to look at alternative provision and the financial viability of the site. And we identified a number of options. And fundamentally, we have to look what's the most economically viable option, but also what leads to increases in physical activity and sports participation. Because fundamentally, we need to get this past Sport England if you're going to be able to develop the site. And our understanding is that unless you're driving increases in participation, Sport England will object to any development of sporting facilities, never mind golf. If we move on, Derek. So the methodology that we follow it for any sport. So if we were looking at a sports centre, if we were looking at a swimming pool, a golf centre, we follow what's called Sport England's prescribed methodology, which is assessing needs and opportunities guidance. And as already stated, we look at the supply in the area. It's important to say, we don't just look at the boundaries of the local authority. We actually have to look at a 20-minute drive time from the facility in question. And that 20 minutes is based, and again, we do it for sports halls or swimming pools, etc. But that 20 minutes is based on the fact that the vast majority of people, the 75% of people in general, live within 20 minutes of a facility. So when we've been looking at the supply, although it's the only municipal course in the area, its direct competitors are the other eight facilities within that 20-minute drive time. We undertake site visits of all those other facilities, and we undertake consultation. Now, not all facilities wish to divulge their information to us. They think it's commercially sensitive. But what we're trying to gauge is to understand how important golf is. And actually, golf is really quite important in Rushcliffe. 2.9% of the population, according to Active Places, of people, 2.9% of the population actually take part, which makes it your 9th most popular sport in Rushcliffe. But when we're doing our assessments, there's 4 very distinct elements that we have to account for, and that's the quantity, the quality, accessibility, and availability. And the availability is about the price range and who's allowed to play. And actually, you know, the price range for Edwalton, for example, is nearly half that of other courses in the area. So there's a lot going on. Fundamentally, it's a pay and play course, and even though there is a club base there. So they're the elements that we look at. That's what leads to the supply and demand analysis. And at the end of that, when we've done all our consultation, when we've been to all the sites, when we've looked at the data and done the analysis, that's when we come to our conclusion. Derek, excellent. So I'm happy to talk over any more details of the supply and demand analysis, but actually that's what we do. That's what we're well versed in, regardless of what the sports facility is. So what are our findings? And again, I've obviously, tried to put a shorter synopsis on this, but Edwalton Golf Centre is positioned as an entry-level facility. It's primarily focused on pay and play users. It's on, you get people who want to go occasionally, you get people who actually buy a season ticket, who'll play more often, but fundamentally it's about getting people active and getting them into golf. And from that, sometimes people will stay there, but on other occasions they'll move on because they get hooked. It is unique within the 20-minute catchment area because it is the only municipal, as I've already stated. Probably Riverside Golf Course and Centre is similar, but it's primarily a driving range and its courses are shorter and are of lower quality. And what I did find, and I've actually played your course because I think it's really important to have an understanding. I think it's a good course. I think it can be challenging. It's not easy. And actually a range of handicappers can use it. So it's not just about saying it's a high handicapper course. It is available for everybody. And then we have to think of what would happen if the course was to close in its entirety. And we reckon it would be really challenging for existing users. As I've said, many are pay and play and don't potentially want to or can afford to become members of other clubs. So they may well access Riverside, which again, we've already said, accessing lower quality, shorter, easier course. They might become members or use other facilities in the area, but that's more expensive. They may well travel outside the catchment area in order to access affordable facilities. But again, there's a travel element and there's a cost element to that. And there's what we've called now nomadic golfers. It's an increasingly popular and has been sort of rising for the last few years. And the problem with nomadic golfers is if they don't commit to courses are more reliant and less financially viable because they're actually relying on people to turn up and play in nice weather. And then the other option then is that they may well stop playing golf entirely, which doesn't then link back to, you know, your leisure strategy of trying to drive participation. We recognise all that, but we also recognise that at the end of it, you cannot continue with Edwalton Golf Centre as it is because you've got a deficit and that's variable between 38 and 50,000 over the past 3 years, and that can't continue. There is an opportunity with the proposed housing development in the area that the numbers of people obviously in the area will rise, and therefore the opportunity for them to play golf may well help drive up participation. So the options that we considered are keeping the standard hole offering and not the par 3 rather than the par 3, because in essence, the standard hole element is far more popular than the par 3 element of part of the course. If you were to do that, expenditure on aspects such as maintenance may have to be rationalised, but with a smaller golfing space, but you're not going to save an awful lot of money on that. One of the things that we did look at, if you're going to retain a standard hole offer, was whether that could be reduced to 6 holes. That's something that Golf England has been pushing over the last few years. So one of the things that we did following this, when we came onto the feasibility, was went in search of 6-hole courses across the country to see whether they were working or not. What we've also identified, and again, this is when we compare it to national participation rates, is you've got a lack of driving range bays in the area. And potentially, if those are developed, then we would suggest that it would help to drive, keep income going, especially throughout the winter months when there's fewer people playing golf outside. But there would be a necessity for floodlights and for the bays to be covered. And then the other thing that we considered that we thought needed looking at was potential for improved multifunctional club or community facility, which could cater both for the local community and golfers. But all of this is dependent on quality, and quality is key. If you've got a good quality facility, whether it's a driving range, whether it's a golf course, whether it's a community facility, you're only going to drive people to use it if you've actually got good quality. And that's essentially a very brief run through the needs assessment and our findings. So I would ask if there's any specific questions on that element of the report so far.
Thank you very much, Claire, for that really detailed presentation. Very much appreciate the time that you've put into doing this study and to delivering to us this evening. So I think you're quite right. It's important that we look at the questions on this presentation now, and then we will get to, following this, we'll do questions on the overall item, the recommendations. Just before we get to the questions to Claire, I think just it's worth going through the recommendations just to make sure we're in context here of what we're actually reviewing tonight. So there's 4 recommendations. A is that the significant asset at Edwalton Golf Course should not continue in its current form, given its low usage and the current cost to the taxpayer. And B, that master planning work is undertaken for the site, including a business case review report delivered to Cabinet in 2021. Time with the local plan process. D is that at least some of the site, so the current par 3 course, should be considered for development for housing as part of the master plan work. And D, that there is potential to develop and invest in a driving range and community facility as part of the master plan work. So before we get to actually debating those recommendations, is there any questions for Claire on the presentation? Councillor Walker got in first, so over to Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much, Claire. I'm interested in this particularly from a sporting angle. Clearly here there's an element, there's an extent to which this is a community asset as a green space, full stop. There's an extent to which it's an asset as a golf course. One of the things that I took from your presentation was the potential opportunity as a sports facility rather than necessarily just as a golf course. So with, I think you said golf being 9th most popular sport in the borough, is one of the things you looked at, or could one of the things you look at assessing whether there is an opportunity for the overall participation in sport to be increased at the site via a non-golfing use?
So in the first instance, we found that there is a requirement to keep a golf course because it is being used, it is popular, and so there is a requirement, and our view would be that if you actually changed it to something or tried to change it to something else, that Sport England would object. So that's the first instance. So when we came to the financial viability, and there's a second part to the presentation, which is about the feasibility study, we did consider whether you could have other activities, for example, cycling and walking, and we thought about high ropes and things like that. Fundamentally, they will not lead to improved financial viability. And as part of the feasibility, we had to consider whether it can wash its own face. So one of the elements that we thought would be better for increasing participation in golf per se would be to develop a driving range, because that will drive participation in sport and physical activity throughout the year, and it will also increase the financial viability of the site. Those people would then move on to the course. We did do some estimates on the numbers of people participating and the impact that could have. So we took off the people. So if you're going to put it on the par 3 course, for example, we took off the people that would be normally participate on the par 3 course, and then we did an estimate based on national averages on the numbers who would use the driving range to offset those losses. Does that make sense? So we did consider other activities, but fundamentally we felt that this is a really, really good golf centre that could be improved.
That's the question. Thank you. I've just been Derek Hayden now has got his hands up, please.
It's just to point out, there is another section to the presentation in terms of the feasibility. I just wanted to make you aware that just focus on the needs assessment element, and Claire will do the second half when you're ready, just in case people have questions around the feasibility element. That's all.
Okay, that's fine. Councillor Jones, do you want to ask your question now, or shall we just add in the feasibility study first and answer the questions afterwards?
Yeah, I'll leave it till afterwards. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's best, just to make sure we're not asking questions that they go, aha, I'll be telling you that in 30 seconds. So, okay, thank you for that, Claire. We'll hand back over to you to finish the next part, if that's okay.
So the feasibility study element, the key objective, as I've already stated, is to identify the most viable option for the site. And as I've already stated again, and I can't overstate this enough really, our understanding is that Sport England will object to housing development on land used for sport, never mind golf, it's wider than golf, unless increased participation can be identified. We recognise that there was a sensitive nature to the Commission. So the consultation that we've undertaken has been mainly council and the operators, but that's on the feasibility element. That's in addition to that conducted before via the needs assessment. So this was the second piece of work building on the first piece of work. And obviously we've carried out this current piece of work during COVID-19, which adds its own intricacies to the work. But a lot of the information we had was sort of we found out prior to lockdown. Yeah, here we go. We are moving on. Sorry, Derek.
Yeah, sorry.
It's all right. So as always, so building on from the options really. So building on from the needs assessment, because of the importance of the standard whole course, that's the element that we thought we would keep. It also works out with the geography and the topographical layout of the area as well. So we looked at a 9-hole standard course and we considered a 6-hole standard course. Now that's a really interesting one, because when we went off to try and find 6-hole courses, having been told that they are the great saviour of golf because people can play it in an hour and get back to the work, we've only found 2 across the country, and neither of them would give us any information on usage. And to be honest, have a 9-hole course and come off after 6 holes if that's, if you're rushing sort of thing. So although we investigated it, and as far as we're concerned, it was a non-starter. So then we looked into developing the driving range bays. Is there enough room? Can you do it? What's the best way of doing it? Where could it go? And what's the impact? But fundamentally, our view came quite strong that we would like it to drive up participation, and it will also financially make a big difference to the operation of the site. We also looked at investment in the clubhouse. Obviously, there's the Melton Road urban extension development, which is going on, and there's more houses over the way. And we're led to believe that they require a community centre and that there's issues around that. There's possibility for this site, certainly, of developing additional daytime use. That's not to say Lex Leisure aren't looking to do it now, but what you're looking at, you would want to see a quality facility. So there are groups out there. There's going to be an increasing number of people living locally, whether it's over the way or whether it's closer. And so the chances are there's going to be increased demand for a daytime facility. And then we obviously looked to reconfigure, the best reconfiguration for the course to ensure that we can still have a quality golf offer, but that you would be able to build some houses. And that's really what we looked at within the options of the feasibility study. So I think this pretty much goes over what I've just said. We then look at the market for each of the areas. So we looked at the market separately for the standard holes. We looked at the market for the par 3 holes, and we looked at the market for the driving range. And fundamentally, there is an undersupply of a driving range, range bays in the area, and that's an area that we felt that could. And it's not a linear process. This, so you have ideas, and then obviously you investigate. So we looked at, as I said earlier, we looked at the treetop stuff, and we looked at walkways, we looked at cycleways, but fundamentally, whilst they can still be built in and you can potentially build in a green gym, financially that doesn't help with your the viability of the site. So we looked at then whether we could look at developing a 15 to 20 bay area, and then we actually got some drawings done to see whether it would fit in. I think that's so. Fundamentally, there's a lot of work gone in there, and I'm skipping to the end really, which is because it's hard to go through all the methodology of how you do it, but in doing our analysis, we look at what the facilities that are available, we look at current demand, we look at how the future demand is going to look, not just short term, but obviously longer term. As I said, there's a chance that COVID is going to drive numbers back when people come out of a hibernation, but actually that could fall off again in the future, and that's for golf to sort out. But you have got a good facility in the 9-hole course, and we genuinely believe it could be enhanced significantly as a golf and a golf centre if you invest in a driving range to support that. And as I said, you'd obviously need to sort out the car parking a little bit. That would be helpful. You'd have some lighting. We have run the ideas past the operator, and if I'm honest, they're very keen, and I got a very positive feeling that they would say that, and obviously because they can see the value in it. When we're talking about a driving range, there's opportunities to go down the technical aspect, and you can have cameras and you can have other things happening. That's over and above. But the thing about a driving range is it encourages different market segments to attend. And the last time I was at a driving range, I was there hitting the ball, and I'm really boring, trying to hit it 40 yards because that's what I was hitting. That's me practicing. In the next bay along, there was the boyfriend, girlfriend who were trying to hit the ball as hard as they can and showing off and all that. And in the other one, there's other people. So you get youngsters, you get older intergenerational opportunity with granddads and grandmothers taking the kids. And you get, proper golfers, as you will, especially in the winter time, making sure that they're keeping going. So the 20 bay driving option to me is key to making this site tick, and the quality that it offers. And that's really the conclusion of where we got to, Derek. We then did some drawings, and here is just the top picture really shows where a 20 bay, we marked it out. It shows where a 20 bay driving range could fit. The bottom picture to the left shows what it could look like. And if you look at the one on the left and the one on the right at the bottom, you can see the difference in the quality. Because to be honest, when I went to the site, I didn't even recognize that you had 6 driving ranges when I first went, driving bays, because they just pretty much look like they're in the middle of a field. The quality aspect, I think, is something else that will drive people to the site and show the future proposal versus the current offer, really, potential. That's the end of the feasibility, but actually there's a little bit more because on the finances. So would it be sort of fundamentally, once we've done the feasibility, once we've done what options we think, then we actually do some estimated trading. We looked at what currently the site is doing and the expenditure for the site. We looked at the potential of obviously the income from the driving range. We took into account the current losses that the site is making. And then when we get to the estimated trading account, we also run different sensitivity analyses to say if you're going to overachieve by 10%, if you're going to underachieve by 10%, if expenditure is going to go up and income is going to come down. But fundamentally, we believe that this facility will wash its face and will drive participation. And again, I think that just actually goes over what I've just said. And it is a high level case, but it is based on currently the percentages of people active on the different elements. What we didn't take account of is the income that could be generated from the clubhouse and from a community point of view, because we didn't have that information and that knowledge. But fundamentally, if it's not being used, it wouldn't really cost you much additional to have a decent facility, if you understand. The opportunity is there to actually improve income from that venue. So to conclude then, we are aware that it's unlikely that Edwalton Golf Centre will be able to continue in its current form, given the capacity and the financial losses that it's continuing to make. We do understand that further work will be required, some master planning, but the way that we've configured the site, you're keeping your standard holes, you're getting rid of the par 3 for housing and for the driving range, but that should lead to driving up participation. The financial viability is dependent on that driving range. And I think it's really important to understand that when we do this piece of work, we do look back at your corporate strategies and we do look at your leisure strategies. And we believe that this development will align with your corporate strategy in that it's maintaining and enhancing residents' quality of life. So it's about being able to continue to provide facilities on the site into the future. And it also supports your leisure strategy in that you continue to invest in venues, maintaining or improving standards of provision. But in both elements, it's about quality of life and it's about increasing participation. And I think you've got a chance of getting it past Sport England. That's not for me to second guess Sport England, but they increasing participation and their new strategy came out yesterday, and increasing participation is still really, really an important part of physical activity and sport moving forward. There you go, the end.
That's great, Claire. Thank you very much for that, and that really puts that into context. So go straight to questions. So that's Councillor Jones first, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've got some questions. I've also got some general points I want to make, but the questions first. The report and the presentation does seem to have focused on obviously the loss at the moment, but the use of the golf course or housing or both. And it seemed to me that there's a number of sports facilities that are missing in the area, netball being one. And the reason for this is interconnectedness. And if more people use the site, more people will think about using its other facilities. And I just wondered how much, whether netball or running track, given that a lot of people walk and run when the ground permits in that area. We lost the netball facilities at Rushcliffe School, and there were major national events there. Assault courses, opportunities for forest school for kids, were those looked at? Because those would bring a wider number of the population into the area and more likely to gravitate and think, oh, this is another facility I can use.
As I said earlier, when we set out, the first element of, and the process is to look at, you've got a golf course, or you've got golf opportunity, is to look at the supply and demand analysis. And basically there is still a requirement for golf in the area. So we have focused on golf, but we did, as I've already stated, look at doing high ropes and walking routes and cycling routes. But fundamentally, we didn't look at netball particularly, if I'm honest, and that's not, because that wouldn't necessarily fit with the site, because it would be used 2 or 3 times. No, and I can see you might disagree with me, but all I'm doing is giving my opinion. But fundamentally, if you're going to have netball, it may be used 2 or 3 nights. It's basically tarmac that you could play on. And actually, there's opportunity in many places to actually use schools better, to actually, with facilities that are already there, and use the capacity that's available in other areas. This is specifically, we did focus on the golf because what we're trying to do, knowing that, recognizing that we need to keep golf, we want to help drive participation in golf up. Does that answer your question?
It does. I just think, you know, as following on from Rex's question, I just think interconnectedness of sports use is more likely to be bring mutual success. But obviously, you don't think that's a runner.
No. That's no. I do. There's also a limited amount of space on what you can deal with and what you can actually build on. So again, one of the initial thoughts was to actually put a 3G football, full-size football pitch on type, which would also drive up participation. But that would then detract from the golf, and it would also take away size-wise from allowing any housing it would limit housing development. So there's lots of things that we think of that don't necessarily go into the report, but that's not to say that they haven't been addressed prior to that.
Sure. I think it's worth saying as well that if we go with the recommendations and we say for a master planning exercise, that's obviously a conversation that we need to be having through the right channels, the planning process, to obviously as part of the master planning for the rest of the site as well. If something you feel strongly about, something you feel residents would like on the site, something you can work with. Obviously, Claire's working to a set parameters, which was given to her by Borough Council, which I know you appreciate, Ron and Claire, and thank you for what you've done there. I think it's worth putting that into context, rather, like I say, we can input into that if we get to that stage, if we do go the recommendations tonight, because I agree with you as well, Rod, there is opportunities even on the site as well to make sure we master plan that to within an inch of its life to maximise any opportunities that there are there for other sports, and also as a wider around the area as well. Derek's probably going to tell me off for saying something now because put his hand up, so I'll bring in Derek now. No.
No, it's just the fact that we have recently updated our play and pitch strategy,
Right.
which has an action plan for all the sports that we have in Rushcliffe, and it identifies the needs and demands which
Right.
with through the NGBs. So in taking Councillor Jones' point, there are demands in sports, but in terms of looking at in the whole, what's the best opportunity for Edwalton, that was taken into consideration as part of this process as well.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, I don't play golf, but I have walked around there, and what's striking is the number of people who walk and some who run. And but quite often the ground's pretty soggy, and there's no access from the what you might call the triangle, the new build, the other side of the railway embankment. And I mean, it's a minor point, but I think a walk link should be created across from the triangle so that there's wider access to the site. Personally, I think the council's benefited many millions from the sale of land at Sharp Hill, and that should be invested in the clubhouse. And I totally support that and the driving range. But I do not support the provision of housing on the site. I think the green lungs that we've got within the A52 are basically the golf course and the land west of Sharp Hill Wood. And many people walk and exercise in those areas. And that may not be counted as a sport, but it's a very healthy activity that a lot of people participate in. So I wouldn't be supporting two of the recommendations in this report for that reason.
That's Councillor Jones. It's also worth saying that there is a pathway from the new estate, but the problem is it isn't well signposted. I have raised that with the County Council to put in signposts, so because you can actually cross the road. But again, it needs a crossing going in, so it's not joined up. I agree with you, but you can access the site from down the where the bungalows are on the road there, and the two sort of new houses there. You come through a path and you end up on the bottom of the course, and you can walk down and round to the clubhouse. But I do agree with you. You know, if we do get to the stage of if we do go with a new clubhouse, we do need to upgrade those routes as well, because in the winter they are slightly treacherous.
Yeah, you can wander around those bungalows, but what you can't do is come through what I'd call the triangle, where the new housing is, at the far end. You know, near the A52, near the old railway line.
So I mute myself there. No, I do take the point there, Councillor Jones, so that needs to be looked at as well. So thank you for those points. Councillor Malander, see you next on the list.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you also, Claire, for the presentation. Yeah, I was just when you were talking about that particular part of the walk around there, you need some pretty strong and sturdy mud-proof boots at the moment, I think, to do any of the walks up there. I think it's really important that we do keep the excellent sporting facilities we've got in Rushcliffe. We all are very, very aware of the demand for housing, but it's not our job as councillors to pave the whole of Rushcliffe or build houses absolutely everywhere. And I do have the concern that we're kind of almost being faced with the, well-built houses or what, and there is an element of a false dichotomy being sort of placed on us there, I feel. I think it's important that we keep the as much of the golfing facility as possible. I don't play myself, but of course I do know, plenty of people do, and plenty of people sort of enjoy the walks around there as well. And it's not just for us as well. Humans don't own the planet in that sense. There is a lot of wildlife around there. There are a lot of people who enjoy seeing the wildlife around there, and it's there for its own sake as well. We need to be wary of sort of trying to turn everything into a kind of either a totally managed park or building houses everywhere to the utter detriment of the rest of the environment of which we are part. I've got a slight concern about the idea of the use of the community centre. every time a housing development or another development of some kind comes forward, we're promised community centres, we're promised public access, we're promised community use. Claire, this isn't to dig at you in any way, shape or form. It's something that comes up every single time. You know, it's councillors who've been on for a while are familiar with, and again, Councillor Jones has mentioned the Sharp Hill development. It was going to have a community centre in the centre of the development. It got shoved to one side. It became an afterthought, and it's all but disappeared now. This happens, you know, time and time again. And I think it's something that we need to be very, very wary of. If we have a master plan, it comes forward, it has a promise of community centre, of community use. And when it comes to it at the end of the day, it's either not there, or it's marginalised, or it's very, very difficult to use if it is there. So I think that's something that we need to be very, very mindful of before we go down that particular route, because no matter what the promises that are made at the beginning, they will very, very, very rarely turn up there in the actual development at the end of the day. I would just say that, yes, I could understand totally why Sport England would be wanting us to keep it as a full sports use rather than any housing there. I do think if there is some housing that's built there, I don't quite understand from the presentation we've had what their response would be to that. Are they against any housing or all housing, or what level, or is there some compromise? So I'm not saying I back the idea of housing there, because I would much rather keep it as a sports facility in its entirety, and, you know, with the public access and sort of some natural environment as well. But I just didn't quite get exactly how their level of objection would come in, at what point. So maybe we could have a little bit of feedback on that.
So fundamentally, Sport England's starting point is they will object to housing on sports facilities. That's the starting point. However, they recognise, for example, if you've got a boggy piece of grass, which we call a football pitch, and you're going to build housing on that and create an artificial turf pitch somewhere else, which can lead to increased participation, more regular participation, then they will that's mitigated against the house building there is mitigated against with the development of an artificial turf pitch. So fundamentally, what Sport England is trying to do, and my understanding is that they want to increase participation in general. The way that this facility is going, it's obviously got ongoing financial issues. And so what we need to do is show Sport England a solution that will show that it's going to drive participation forward. I cannot guarantee that they will not object. However, we have been in discussion with them early on in the process to let them know the sort of direction of travel that we were going. And it's a matter of officers having to work it through with Sport England to ensure that Sport England is fully aware and will not object going forward. But it's down to the vagaries sometimes of the individual officers in Sport England.
Okay, thank you very much. That helps. Yes, I just point out that yeah, okay, one person's boggy bit of land might be another animal's, another creature's home and habitat. So you know, football field or no. Thank you.
Councilman, I think it's also just worth, we go back to recommendation where we're not saying here that we are recommending houses to go onto the site. What we are saying, if we go with the recommendation in its current form, is that part of these sites, the current pathway, should be considered for development for housing as part of master planning work. So I think it's crucial to say that that's where we are with the recommendation. Of course, that every person here would be able to feed into Cabinet in terms of their views on that when that piece of work is done, and to the portfolio holder, and obviously all the various groups in their group leaders meeting with the leader of the council as well, putting that forward. So I just want to bear that in mind where we are in terms of.
I just say thank you, Chair. I know I'm just almost painfully aware, and as other councillors are as well, that what turns up in a master plan can be a long way from what we actually end up with on the ground.
No, I agree, Councillor Mann. So that point's mainly for people who might be watching at home and thinking that potentially may miss part of the recommendation, think that what we're saying here tonight is, you know, get the bulldozers out and start putting the houses, just to put that into context. And I agree with you as well, master planning. I think this is why it's absolutely crucial that we make sure we are on with that process and feeding in. I mean, giving an example where we are with the Gaps and Fields development, as you probably know, the council quite strongly say there has to be a strategic plan in place. I think realised what happened with Sharp Hill and Edwalton, and something has been an interest I have as a local councillor. I've absolutely backed 100% and told the developers straight that I would never, I'm not going to consider on that application until I see that plan in place. I know colleagues agree with me as well there. So I think hopefully as the council knows where our master planning documents, and it's our job as councillors to keep pressing that. And if we're not having the master planning documents, if we get to that stage, of course, is to keep pushing that and do our roles to the best of our ability to do that. I know everyone here would. So Councillor Jones, your hand stuck from before, or have you got another point?
No, just basically, I'm totally opposed to recommendation C. If there's enough space for housing in place of the Par 3 course, then there's enough space for other sports. There's enough space for planting more trees, but there's certainly more space for involving people in other ways. So that's why I'm opposed to that. I'm also opposed to it on the basis that there's very few remaining green areas and opportunities to exercise and walk and run, as I've said, except west of Sharp Hill Wood and there, and everything else involves a car journey, by and large, of some distance to get somewhere else to walk, not in nature rather than on roads. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. I think it's worth saying as well, I do completely understand your point on the housing, and I've seen myself, I want to be for every blade of grass in that Par 3 to be housing. I'm sure that that's why the master planning will be done in terms of looking at what can be incorporated, whether it's sports facilities, whether it's more tree planting, obviously in line with the current policies we have as a council around planning and the open spaces. So I do get your point, and like I said, I just want to put that on record for anyone who might be watching and trying to understand what we're talking about in terms of what housing might be on that land and where we are as a council. But there are policies in place that we can look to mitigate. So there's no other hands up at the moment, so I just want to say my piece, if I may. So again, like I say, Claire, thanks for that presentation. I can say that I've been around the course on the Par 3, tried once on the main course, but I donated too many golf balls to the stream. I think I had to give up about the third hole, but that tells you my standards of golf. But they're half them pouring in Council Bansal's back garden still, so I have to go around and get them back. The facility you say up at NG1 with the driving range, I mean, since they redeveloped that area, which I think was a couple of years ago now, the usage is through the roof. I've been there a few times and you've struggled to get in. You've had to make sure you book in front. And what's useful as well is people stay. They stay at the bar there. They stay around the cafe and bring that income in, which actually, if we get the community centre right, and again, coming back to the point about community centre, I think the advantage here is it's there. We just need to spend the work to get it up to standard. And I completely agree before, it's not been utilised as it should be. There's been 2 spare rooms, 1 room that's gone through more lives than a cat in terms of what's going to be and never really settled on. So it does need a lot of work to get it right, but there is that opportunity. And coming back to your point about the 6-hole option, I think you're quite right. If you said there's only 2 courses like that in the whole of the UK, that tells you they don't work, to be perfectly honest. I think we don't need to look that much further. And I think you're completely right that you're trying to go halfway measure on 2 people, you're not going to satisfy anyone. But from the conversation I've had in the past with members around there, they are really keen with that golf course. They want it to be more successful. And the point I would really make overall is with the operator, whoever that is, with the current operator, or if that's reconsidered part of any future process, we need to be absolutely clear what we want back from that investment, what we want that course to be, because you're quite right, you're saying it's popular, people there, but we're not making any money out of it. So that tells you something's going wrong in the middle process there. And I could say that someone who was close to when I was on the committee before then, I fed that back to officers. There's nothing secret there. Come back, that work needs to be done with the operator closely, and something that I think we should be bringing back to our committee in future to make sure that any investment that goes, if we get to the stage where investment goes into that site, we need to make sure we get that return, which is the operator putting the right work into place there to do it. So that's where I'm there. So I'll ring Councillor Bansal in for comments.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for the presentation. Just a couple of comments and questions. I'm not going to repeat, but I agree with a number of things that Councillor Mallender mentioned about green space. There's 2 questions what I had. You mentioned a lot about the driving range, about having a 20-bay driving range. Who else locally within the area, when you look at the golf courses, has anything like that? And up and down the country, I suppose, you mentioned quite a few times, I'm guessing they're quite popular. and a lot of people must enjoy them. I'm not a golfer, I've not played golf, so that's the question. And the second one was just around the community there, the kind of community hub. In terms of, did you look at kind of promotions, advertisements, kind of bringing in people and telling them, look, we're here, come and use the facilities, and how much does that have an impact on a golf course?
That's the $1 million question, the second one there, if you don't mind me saying. The first question is regarding driving ranges. Driving ranges, you require quite a lot of land and you require the investment to actually build it. So even on golf courses, it's very difficult to find the right space sometimes to develop a driving range. What you've got here is an opportunity in the area. There is going back to that 20-minute drive time that I mentioned earlier, there is an underrepresentation of golf bays in the area when you compare it to the East Midlands and to the national benchmark. So we believe that there is an opportunity. The market suggests that there is an opportunity based on standard usage across the country. So that's the opportunity is there, and it's not normally there. Funny enough, I've done a piece of work in the past, which was in South Ayrshire, which also ended up suggesting a driving range, and it was a smaller driving range, but they proceeded with that, and obviously you forget after a part, they take it on, and I'm not sure where it got to. But there's another opportunity where there is a 30-bay driving range, and I can't give the name of the facility, which is a municipal facility, and we estimate that financially the council, they've leased it out, and financially the council is making a loss because they've not got that facility in house. So it's there to be done. It's an opportunity, and the market would suggest that you go ahead with it. When it comes to driving increases in participation and across golf, if I actually knew that, I would be probably chief exec of golf. But in essence, it's about the quality of the experience, and it's about word of mouth. If you've got a driving range, you've got people that can go there and practice and do whatever, and then make that step onto the course. Getting people across there are perceived barriers for most sports, but golf is very good at having greater perception of barriers to taking part. And so it's not about leaflets. It's about getting people going somewhere to have a go with the family, with the extended family, with schools, with opportunities that doesn't put people under pressure, so that they start to enjoy it. So that then if you do that at school level, for example, then when kids get a bit older, they go to the driving range and they don't feel stupid. And then if they do that, then the chances are they'll be able to move on to the course. So it's about giving a varied opportunity and encouraging people to take part. Obviously, marketing and promotion is really important, but I don't think it's the be all and end all with golf, if I'm honest.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sims.
Yeah, thank you for that. I've been listening to the debate with interest on the presentation. Thank you very much for the presentation. I used to be a bit like a bit of golf, but I tended to look like I was clubbing a seal as my swing. So for my animal rights purposes, I stopped. So it spoils good walk as far as I'm concerned at the moment. But that not to say that I'm not in support of golf. I don't think that building more houses is the answer. I think Rushcliffe is leading the way in house building. It's becoming a concrete jungle, and it needs to take a breath, and certainly to build houses on valuable green space where we've got wildlife and things on the edge of already quite a built-up area, I don't think is the way to go. But then throwing good money after bad at a sport that's failing effectively, is that the option? Is that the way forward? But certainly I don't think we should sell the family silver at the moment, and we ought to try and look to maximise the site for community involvement, sports community involvement, whichever way that's felt to do, whether it is a driving range or whatever, and a 9-hole. I don't think a 6-hole is I think totally, if you've not got the time, if you've got time for 4 holes, you do the 4 holes and leave. So so I know that's a bit of a mixed message, but I won't be at all in favour of housing. I think we've got enough housing just in the Newton area and the East Bridgeford area. There's within a square mile, there's over 2,000 houses going up. I'd like to know where all these people come from, if I'm perfectly honest, but there's lots and lots of housing. So what we need is a lot more community facilities, in my view.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sims, for that. I'm not sure there was a question directed to Claire then, unless you want to ask Claire directly anything, David. If not, I'll go to Councillor Walker.
Sorry, it was more of a statement. I shouldn't have made.
Of course, yeah, sorry.
Yes, Claire, is there honestly a future for golf? That South Notts Golf Club's just up the road. Is there a future for this facility, honestly, or are you doing a good job at being a good consultant and banging the drum for golf?
Can I just say I am an independent consultant, and as a consultant, we're independent. If we don't think that something is viable, I would stand up here and say it, and that's why we didn't go down the cycling and walking routes. That's why we didn't go down. I'm not saying netball from what was said before, but fundamentally, I would not be here. I do believe that there is an opportunity, but I do believe that the driving range is key to that. Yes.
Thank you very much. Thanks. I might even give it a go if we but not the facility that I've just seen on the video currently. I'll give that one a miss.
Okay.
The current one isn't the best we've had past. Thank you for that, Councillor Sims, and thank you, Claire, for that, and obviously thank you again for what the work you've done. Councillor Walker.
Thanks, Chair. And conscious that we've been batting this round for a little while now, and we'll probably want to move on to the recommendations. And I say this in the knowledge of having just said that statement, but on rereading the recommendations, it strikes me that it would be nice to have something in there where there is perhaps a little bit more focus on the view, which I think seems to be fair of the committee, that perhaps there should be a bit stronger reference that the site should continue to provide golfing, sporting opportunities, and that they would be enhanced by the recommendations that we've heard about in the report, because I think it does seem very true to me that the viability, if we doing nothing isn't an option, because the site's losing money. So but I would like there to be something that does stress the view that its asset as a sporting golfing site should be a significant part of any review, master plan, whatever terminology we're putting on it.
Okay, that's Councillor Walker. I mean, I'll get people's views on that. Looking at the recommendations, I was going to take the recommendation. Sorry, who's on it? Thank you. The recommendations, I was going to take them separately, because obviously listening to the debate tonight, there will be some people, I believe, who won't be voting for one of the recommendations, that would be potentially for the other one. So it's simple to do. Looking at what you just said there, Councillor Walker, it's probably recommendation D that could be slightly reworded. If that was your thoughts, which is where
Shall I draft something and put it in the chat while you're going on the others?
Yeah, we can do. If you can put something together, and we can take that vote on the amended recommendation before we go to the full one. So can I just check if there's anyone else who wants to speak, because I've got no other hands up. Councillor Healy. Leo, so you're on mute still.
Thank you, Chair. Just on the community facility, I mean, it's perhaps pertinent to mention. I sit on the planning committee, and certainly when we were discussing the major development at Edwalton, there was a significant demand from our local residents for a community facility, and it's something we talked about and looked at. And of course, there's a new school coming up on site, as we all know. And some discussion went on with regards to trying to share the school facilities, their community facilities, community hall. But of course, that raised issues in terms of safeguarding issues, access. Clearly, we could not and would not want to be using their facilities during school hours. But I just wish to make the point that certainly there is a demand there, and perhaps that is an option that we need to seriously consider. The other point, really, if I may, is just a question, and again, I don't golf either. I assume this club has a membership, because in the notes that I've read, it was basically, well, you just turn up and play. Now, clearly there's an income stream problem, but I just wonder where that is. Is it the fact that people don't buy a membership, that they just turn up and play when it suits? Just a thought, really.
It's basically a hybrid where there are membership there. There is a membership club. There's also the opportunity for people to turn up and play. So it's a good mixture that's there now. I said there was quite a good core membership when I was involved a couple of years ago, and I believe that's probably still holding up. Claire's nodding, so I'm off speaking sense for once, so that's good to know. But like I say, I think one of the advantages, Councillor, there is, like as Claire pointed out, the other facilities nearby are all membership, where you've probably got to have the right shoes, you've got to kit yourself out and turn up with the right clothes before you get let on. Whereas with this facility, you can turn up in your tracksuit bottoms and your ripped t-shirts and with some clothes that you probably bought from the Antiques Roadshow for a tenner and get going. And so for people of a more modest income, or who want to get involved with sport, or their parents who obviously want to see if the kids like it without spending £500 on kit and to say they don't like it for the clubs in the water. That's something, one of the beauties of this site, to be perfectly honest. Speaking from experience, my dad took me there when I was when I was 10, 11 to try out there, and it wouldn't cost much at the time, and that's why I kept going. I think I've seen other families there and take advantage of that. And just to put the point about the community facility, in case there's also people watching, just to say where we are with that. So the original plan on this site was for the school, Edwalton, to be the community facility as well. Lots of objections from the school and county council based on safeguarding. So the borough council is still investing in the community facility for the site. It's still ongoing, looking at that. And I think that would be in addition to this facility, because I think there is that need shown. There is the facility for this part of Edwalton as well as on the new estate, because as Councillor Jones pointed out, to get from the new estate to the current clubhouse, you've probably got to take your life to your hands a couple of times and to get around there, or to drive. And obviously, want to try and encourage people who can walk to the facility as well. So the council is still committed. Last time I knew, and Dave's not shook his head and say, stop talking, please. So I'm taking that I'm still talking sense on that point. So thank you very much for that, Councillor Healy. Any other points you wish to make? Or
no, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Claire.
Thanks, Claire. So is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Councillor Walker still got his hand up, which is probably because he's writing his speech still. Yeah, he's halfway there. So before we go to regular, obviously want to bring in the officers again to give their view, want to speak. So Peter, is there anything you want to add?
Yes, I do want to add a few things. I think when you're making this decision, you do need to think about the overall impact as well financially to the council. We are talking about value for money for the taxpayer here, and in terms of the whole site. I mean, some of the things you mentioned about alternative use actually probably going to cost even more money than the cost of the site at the moment. So you do need to bear that in mind. Our capital resources, they are dwindling. In my budget presentations, I've mentioned about borrowing money. Now, clearly, if we can get capital receipts, that will help support other capital projects for the council. And I think you do need to be clear in understanding that particular principle.
Yeah, thanks for that, Peter. I think hopefully everyone's taken that on board the comments you say. I think, like you say, we have got a difficult balance to make. If money wasn't a problem, I don't think we'd be sat here having this presentation. I'd certainly be saying what you're on about. I don't need the money. Let's reinvest in that whole site, keep it green, like you say, put everything in place that we could do to make it a full green site. And again, like some people have said, not everyone plays golf, so we have to then look at the overall. I think I'd like to say the value for money, a site that's overall worth of over 50 million. I think the whole site, and potentially not everyone using it. Do we have to say look at that and get the right balance so we're delivering a safe for the taxpayer? It is a very difficult decision and to go on, because like I said, the motion is, especially for me, the motion is, well, keep it completely as grassland, but looking, like I say, with hat on the finances and also across the whole Rushcliffe. Like I say, we need to bear that in mind in any decision we make. And I think it is worth saying again what we said about the master planning exercise. We are recommending, if we go with the recommendations in the current form, we're not in terms of looking at housing on part of the land. We're not saying the whole golf course. I mean, no one will be sat here saying, I think we've already heard that it's viable to have the full 9-hole course if it's got the right investment, the right operator. No one's saying to put housing on all of that. It's meant to look at housing on part of the land to fund those developments and also to put some money in the bank for Peter to go and spend within the budget. So that's what we need to go to. For people who are watching at home, when Councillor Walker's about the chat and explains at the start, there's a chat facility where we can put comments into ourselves, which I know you can't see on the online stream. So what Councillor Walker's done is put a suggested amendment. Councillor Walker, I think everyone's probably had a chance to look, or if they haven't, do you want to read that out so everyone who's potentially watching at home can understand what potential recommendation you're suggesting as an amendment to D before we get to the recommendations?
So recommendation D that currently reads that there is potential to develop and invest in a driving range and community facility as part of the master plan work. I've said amendment, I think I mean replacement. I'm suggesting recommendation D, the site should continue to provide golfing and possibly other sporting opportunities for local residents. The quality of and participation in golfing provision could be enhanced by investing in a driving range and focusing the offer on a good quality 9-hole course.
Thanks for that, Councillor Walker. So what we'll do when we get to recommendations, I will look at that. I'll put that to the vote on suggested amendment first. After I just want to make sure we check with the officers first. They believe that would be a valid amendment to make. So Peter, is that one you want to just comment on quickly? This is your report.
Right.
So you've got a chance to read it first, so I would be on the spot.
It's okay. I think the only thing that's still missing, obviously there's reference to community facilities in the current recommendation.
Yeah.
Which I don't think that wording, I'm not sure if that really covers that, but
okay. No, I think that's a good point to make up there. So I think Councillor Walker, I'd agree with that. We've got to need to get that wording in there as well, just to make sure we are supporting the community facility as what we mentioned tonight. So potentially, sorry, David, need to promote you there, Dave. I'll bring in Dave Banks.
Thank you, Chair. I think clearly if members want to vote on that alternative, then that can obviously be presented alongside the other recommendations from the work that's been derived, from the presentation and all the hard work that KKP have put in. So it's quite valid for communities group to if they want to support an alternative, the whole thing can be packaged up and presented to Cabinet when they're making any further decision.
Yeah, no, absolutely, David. I think, like I say, I think to me, the amended motion or the replacement, does enhance what we were saying around the sporting facility, but we just need to add in a line there about the community facility. So
I'm trying now.
Is there any other comments anyone wishes to make about I know we're going to go to the vote about the replacement for D. Has anyone got any comments on that or any other wording they'd like to see in place?
I just think, Chair, it's important that we do somehow get the community facility wording in the statement that Councillor Walker is proposing.
Yeah, I absolutely agree on that, Lee. And I see Rex is working hard for the first time in his life to sort of get it back together on that one. So is there any other question anyone else has for Claire, especially? I know Claire's hanging on the line and probably desperate to go for a cup of tea and go off for the meeting here. Get to that, Claire. Or any other questions for officers before we go to recommendations? And Laura.
Can I just check? I know some councillors voiced that they were going to vote against recommendation C.
Yeah.
So would we require a vote on each recommendation?
Yes, Laura, as I mentioned earlier, I think it's best if what I'll do is I'll go for the recommendation and ask if anyone's against for A, B, and the potential new D. If anyone says against, then we'll go around to the vote. And then for C, because it's already been mentioned that some people will be voting against, I think on that one, we will go around the houses and do the vote. If you're okay to prepare and call that vote, that'd be very much appreciated. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm not at all trying to stall absolutely whatsoever while Councillor Walker puts his bit into place. 2 minutes, said that 2 minutes ago. Okay, in terms of putting that together. rather than trying to sound like I'm stalling, I think we'll just give it 1 minute if that's okay for everyone. You've got 1 minute, not 2 minutes, Councillor Walker, so get typing to get this together, just to look at.
Just a question, Chair. Sorry for not putting my hand up. Am I required any further, or would I?
No, I think that's absolutely fine, Claire. Again, thank you very much for the work you put into this. Great presentation. Hopefully we'll see you again. But thank you very much for.
It's saved a 3-hour journey home, actually, doing it by Zoom. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Take care. Good night.
Cheers. Good night.
You've got 15 seconds now, Councillor Walker. It's not like everyone's waiting for you, don't worry. That'll be terrible. So, like I say, what we'll do, as I just mentioned, Laura, we will go through the recommendation individually, because, like I say, I know the comments have been made on to that one. So, I think it's best while Councillor Walker's getting to D, if we can cover off the first recommendation first to see if anyone is against that. So, the recommendation A is that the significant asset Edwalton Golf Course should not continue in its current form, given its low usage and the current cost to the taxpayer. Is anyone against that recommendation? You could put your hand up virtually or physically wave it. I'm not seeing anyone against that. So if anyone, I think that recommendation is carried, Laura, so that saves you a good job on that one. And if we go to option C, sorry, recommendation C, which is that at least some of the sites, brackets, current par 3 course, should be considered for development. No, sorry, ignore me, because that's the one we're going to work there. It's B. So sorry, Councillor Jones, I saw you about to shout at me. Don't worry. Number B. So that master planning work is undertaken for the site, including a business check case for 2021, tying the local plan process. Is anyone against option B? So recommendation B. Again, see no one against, so I'll take that as carried. So that's A and B carried. Councillor Walker, would you like to read out your amended take two?
You want to do C? You want to do C first?
C first.
Yeah. So okay, let's go to C. I was going to see D. I thought everyone may be in favour of that, but that's absolutely right. Let's go to C while you see if you want to amend that quickly. So that at least some of the sites, brackets, current par 3 course, should be considered for development for housing as part of the master plan work. So I think we'll go around the room and do a vote on this one. Laura, if you want to.
Fine.
This
Yep,
is
so
for.
Councillor Jonathan Wheeler,
For.
Councillor Bell Bansal,
Against.
Councillor Dickman,
No, Gary was struggling with his IT because
Yeah.
he was there. So if we can try and get his votes, so that Helen's still around and can give Gary a quick call.
Councillor Dickman, can you write it in the chat if you're for or against?
I'm not sure if we can hear. Is Helen still available to give a quick call?
Yeah, I can ask IT to give him a call. 1 second.
Okay, we go around everyone else. Oh, so you want to call, make that call? That's fine.
Sorry, IT are just going to give him a call now. So next up, we've got Councillor Healy.
For.
Councillor Jones. Oh, you're on mute.
Against.
We've got Councillor Mallender.
Against.
Councillor Sims.
Against.
Councillor Walker.
For.
And Councillor Williams.
For.
So we've got 4 in favour and 4 against. So I'm guessing we need to wait for Councillor Dickman to get back to us.
That's probably why he's hiding.
Um, I can see that Nisha's on the phone to him now, so hopefully.
More tension there. Fine, I'll bring the panic.
Jonathan, do you want me to read my D now?
Yeah, we'll go with that first.
Wait for Councillor Dickman. So if everyone's okay with that, we will come back to recommendation C. So once we get hold of Councillor Dickman, or we attempt to anyway. So would you like to read out your?
I'm going to omit one word from the thing that I put in the chat due to my poor syntax. I don't want my GCSE English teacher seeing this and grading me down. The site should continue to provide golfing and possibly other sporting opportunities in addition to community facilities for local residents. The quality of and participation in golfing provision could be enhanced by investing in a driving range and focusing the offer on a good quality 9-hole course. Use of the community facility could also be increased by investment in the existing building.
Any comments on that, first of all? Okay, just check. Peter, your thoughts? Is that
it's a bit of a mouthful, the recommendation? Yeah. Can we perhaps offline, if you don't mind, perhaps can we work on that recommendation and just rationalise it? That's okay.
Yeah, okay, so what, I mean, like I say, you want to get that right there. What we can vote on is in principle D, which Council Walker's put together, but the wording will be tidied up and then sent round to members, which we have done before on another item in the past, to make sure everyone's in agreement with that. Would that be okay? I think from everything I've heard tonight, we are all in broad agreement with the principle of that recommendation. It will just get the wording right. And I think, especially on the community facility. So is anyone against us doing that? I'm taking everyone fine with that one. So yeah, I think that's we'll go with that then for D. What we've got fine. Laura?
Councillor Dickman has still got a bad connection and he hasn't heard some of the presentation. I don't know about this from a legal perspective, but usually, say for example in planning committee, if they haven't heard the entirety of the presentation and the discussion, they're usually not allowed to vote. What I could do is, if anyone wants a comfort break, I can give Councillor Dickman a call and explain to him what the recommendation is and get his view on that.
I think what's worth telling, sorry, Peter, first.
I mean, obviously we'll be reporting back to Cabinet, and we can just recognise the fact that there was no clear decision on the C, I suppose, it seems to be the conclusion.
Yeah, I think I do just need to double check the constitution, because I think what Laura makes the valid point, especially knowing planning. I do know in other items on Never Council it is people not hearing the substantial part of the debate, but that's very woolly, because you can say what have you heard and what not, what have you not heard, if it's substantial or not to that point. So just to reread this on the constitution, if we can just take a quick 5-minute break to everyone, because also hopefully in that time we can then get Councillor Dickman back online ready for the next two items after this. I am conscious of the time, and I do beg people's forgiveness on this. So if we can just wait, sorry, Councillor Manager.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to suggest that, seeing as we have got a 50-50 split without Councillor Dickman, and if he's not comfortable with casting a vote either way, seeing as he's not heard it, or we're on sort of slightly iffy ground, then he could always count as an abstention, and we simply report back to Cabinet that we were split 50-50.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Councillor Manda, and I'm not got no problem with that. I just wanted to make sure that I was giving Councillor Dickman the right opportunities per the Constitution, because if he did want to vote, and he was actually legally entitled to vote as per the Constitution, I don't want to deny him that right to cast his vote. So I completely agree. If per the Constitution we are fine to go to that point, then I'm absolutely in agreement with you on that one in terms of that, because as I say, we're not a decision-making body, it's a recommendation. So I'm fine to say that we have a split recommendation on that point. But like I say, I just want to make sure that Councillor Dickman has got his right to give that vote, that I'm not taking that away from him by just saying that. So that's why I just want to have a quick check on that one. So if we can just say, so it's 2023 from my, don't worry, not skip 2 years, I meant the time. So if we just take 5-minute break, that's okay. So again, because we're going to be in every hour and a half, I think probably at least on the other item, I think it's good just to give everyone a chance to quickly run to the toilet and to boil the kettle anyway. Councillor Walker, that's the most enthusiastic looked all night on that point, so that's fine. So give me 5 minutes while I just have a quick conversation. If we can stop the live stream there, to anyone who's watching, I do beg your indulgence.
I'll keep the live stream going, but if you can just mute your microphone and turn your camera off, and if we give ourselves like 5 to 10 minutes to come back.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Wheeler, just to let you know, I've spoken to Councillor Dickman. I'm just going to call Helen just to get her view on it. but he's given me his views, but I will discuss that once we're back in the meeting.
Okay, thanks, Laura. To give everyone one more minute, because some people's kettles obviously boil a bit slower than everyone else's. To anyone who's watching live stream at home, so I want to say at the start, our next item on dog fouling and littering part 2, there is a presentation on the public website which we will be referring to. Members have already seen that presentation because we realised tonight was going to be a long night and we wanted to make sure members had proper scrutiny of that item. So while we're waiting, if you're not already, I do recommend you look at that in preparation for when we get to the next item. So you don't think, what are we talking about? Well, anything more than usual, you might think that anyway. So like I say, that's my recommendation there. It's on the Borough Council website under the communities agenda. And the next item will be one of the appendix items. Okay, welcome back everyone. So Laura, I've spoken to Councillor Dickman, so don't worry, we don't need that discussion of Helen because we'll go with everyone's okay with this one. So Councillor Dickman's going to abstain on this item because he's not listened to a proportion of it, and so doesn't want to obviously make a vote on when he's not got the full facts. Unfortunately, he's been trying to connect all night. He's got IT issues where he is, so I know IT are working with him to get him back part of the debate. So on C, that then means it is a tie vote, and as what has been recommended, we will put that to Cabinet as part of the recommendations that we have a split based on that one in terms of that recommendation, and that's what we're sending back over to Cabinet with our decision. So where we currently are, slightly after the ad break, so to speak, recommendation A, we're in favour of. Recommendation B, favour of unanimously as well. Recommendation C is a split vote. Recommendation D in favour of, but that wording will be tidied up along the, we won't be changing the fundamental parts of that recommendation, and that wording will go around to all members within the next couple of days. And if everyone can confirm back that they are happy with that, that will be recorded in the minutes, which we will obviously check over next time and make sure we're happy and tidy all that up for the official procedure. Is everyone okay with that? Thank you very much. So thank you everyone for your patience, and to people watching home again, thank you for that. Whoever says Scrutiny was boring was wrong, you see. So you don't need to watch EastEnders anymore, just make sure you come watch us each time. So we're going to go on to the next item, and in true fashion, I came off it when I was getting the contact details for Councillor Dickman on the technology. So if people have indulgence, bear with one moment while I get the wording exactly right. So we are now on to item 5, which is fly tipping, dog fouling and littering part 2. As I explained a few moments ago, with people who won't watch online, we had a presentation delivered to councillors on this item. The reason for this was because we are aware that there are 3 substantial items tonight, and we wanted to make sure that the item gets full scrutiny. So we took the opportunity to have that presentation delivered so councillors could get that information. And what we're going to do tonight is to debate the presentation we had and the recommendations we have in front of us, and to make that decision. So hopefully everyone has, well, I'm sure I know everyone was watched the presentation, and Councillor Sims, you've seen it online as well. I know you couldn't make it that on that day. So the recommendation is that the councillors consider the report and provide feedback on the council's approach to tackling litter and dog fouling. If first of all bring in, well, David, you find a bit straight to Darryl, is there anything you want to say on this item first?
Thank you, Chair. So we've got both Darryl Birch and Jeff Carpenter on the meeting this evening, just to answer any further questions and queries that members of the committee might have in terms of the content of the report, and indeed any questions from the presentation. Essentially, what we try to do within the presentation and indeed the report is set out the Council's overall approach and strategy to both these functions, the resources that we have to deploy, and indeed a summary in terms of overall sort of performance on both those issues. So we're happy to take any questions if members have any.
Okay, that's great. So I do have a few, but I want to go around the room first, see if anyone wants to make comments first in the presentation. Anyone got their hands up? Not at the moment. I can't see anything on the screen, so if anyone's not indicated their hand up first. The question I want to raise first on the PSPO, Darryl, I'll bring you in here. So obviously we saw that at the moment we don't go for the PSPO on for the dog found on the new estates. That's not currently in place. But what I want to understand is what we would actually need to do to potentially, if we were to recommend that the council look at in that place, what piece of work would need to be done, any potential timeframes or costings to that, and if we feel that would be a benefit to the council and the taxpayer. Because for context, when I was watching online, for the new estates built, so obviously we've got many around the borough, the provision we have around dog found, the act in place to fine people does not cover the new estates. Obviously they're covered by the estate management contracts in place that the homos go into the contract with. So at the moment that's not there, but there is an option if a PSPO was in place. So that's just a question I'm asking, because that has been asked, but I've had representation from councillors on this committee and from 2 residents asking about that. So Darryl, if I hand over to you, please.
Yeah, I think it'll be Jeff
sorry.
Carpenter, yeah.
Sorry, Jeff, because I didn't have your video at the time, so I brought in Darryl at the time. So Jeff there, sorry.
Well, Darryl could have answered it as well, but I'll
there you go. Thank you.
Okay. So in terms of a PSPO, I mentioned the other day on Tuesday that it would bring the situation up to date in terms of current legislative practice. A PSPO lasts for 3 years, and we would need evidence to justify it. And I did also mention, as you recall, that evidence may not actually currently exist, because the numbers of service requests that the council is receiving through its website and through other sources is actually showing a downward trend, in fact. But that withstanding, were there to be a willingness to explore a PSPO specifically for dog fouling, then we would need to carry out a significant consultation exercise. That would need to include all parish and town councils, Kennel Club, Dogs Trust, police, county council, a whole range of other stakeholders, and as well as questions on the website and all the rest of it. So, it's not an insignificant piece of work.
Okay, thanks. I think that's context what needs to be done. Because like I say, a bit of perspective on that one. But before I come back, I'll just bring in Councillor Williams. I think I had his hand up first. Just be Councillor Jones too at this time. Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much. It's just around the provision with WISE and how they operate. Are they only able to do fixed penalty notices on borough council land and the areas that were outlined for littering in the presentation, or are they able to go to other areas with like parish councils land that they might have in order to issue fixed penalty notices? And the reason I ask is that my area, I've been liaising with the town council to do with a lot of littering and case similar to what's been experienced to West Bridgeford Park that happened in the summer, that it was happening in a couple of areas within the town here. Are they able to come to Bingham and those areas and patrol, or is it because it isn't borough land? Thank you.
So Jeff, as well, could you also just a summary just about what WISE is as well, just for anyone who's watching who perhaps didn't see the had a chance to read the presentation, that'd be useful. Thank you.
No problem. So we've engaged at the meeting of this group in July. There was a request to investigate further resources to target environmental crime and specifically fly tipping, because the resources with it in-house are rather limited. And so we've been exploring the private sector and best practice across the country. And we've engaged with a company called Wise, who were formed in 2017, who specialise in environmental crime investigations and enforcement across the country. In fact, they work with over 70 councils across the UK. These are, fully uniformed individuals. They use industry-leading technology, body cameras, and handheld devices. So literally, the minute they issue a fixed penalty, it's uploaded immediately. The pilot was commenced, and it is a pilot, and it's under constant review. So we have a weekly discussion with them, informally, and a monthly, more formal meeting with them. And the way that it works is that essentially they recoup the costs of their patrols through the receipt of fixed penalty notices. The council will receive 5%, in fact. But the purposes of that those meetings is to ensure that they're targeting the right things in the right places. So the other question related to, can Wise carry out investigations on private land? I think was Councillor Williams's question. And I think it slightly relates to, depends on what we're talking about. If it's about fly tipping, specifically we'll be looking at fly tipping on public land, or land that is in the public open space. And they could be investigating that. And I think it's important to note that we have specifically brought Wise into play for fly tipping. That is the focus of their engagement. But to fully utilize those resources, we have also enabled them to have powers to investigate dog fouling and litter. But really the focus was fly tipping and remains fly tipping. In terms of litter, again, I think it relates to the areas in the public open space, as I understand it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so Gareth, just come back in quickly.
Yeah, it's more the point that this is a public open space that is kind of owned by town and parish councils in the borough. This is an open space that the public have right of way and access to. But like what's been experienced on West Bridgford Park, of people congregating when they're able to, when the restrictions were able to do it, and leaving a lot of litter behind and that kind of thing. Is Wise able to go and help kind of our parishes and councils with litter area on their plots, or is it really that only that they go and patrol kind of the borough areas? Because a lot of kind of litter in people's local neighbourhoods, they don't know which council owns what plot of land and whose jurisdiction it is in order to enforce anything like that. It's more they just see litter and it's a bit with the effect that it has.
Yeah, I'll see Councillor Williams. So just bringing Dave quickly to talk about Jeff. I think Dave just raised one for him.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I think obviously this is a pilot for the Borough Council. So it's about looking at Borough Council land and indeed County Council highway land as well. So so that's where we would currently have our statutory role. However, this is a pilot. We can explore whether or not there's a desire to extend Wise's activities into town and parish land at some point in the future. As part of this pilot period. So we can take that point away and explore it. And indeed, Councillor Williams, there's nothing to stop Bingham Town Council teaming up with Wise or indeed a similar service directly themselves.
Great point there, Dave. And I think hopefully other town and parish councils who might be looking tonight will be quickly researching Wise and making sure they don't get a picture of an owl, but they get the picture of that company to look at the details. So interesting, and Jeff quickly.
Yes, I think I would just also just bring in the discussion around the PSPO as well.
Yeah.
That were we to consider a PSPO is only as good as the resources that you can throw at it in terms of the enforcement. So at the moment, if we were to have a PSPO for dog fouling now, for example, well, prior to Wise, then you wouldn't gain any much more benefit than you would have had otherwise. So would there have to be an assumption that with a PSPO there would be the enforcement to back it up?
Just on that point, there, just to make sure we get it correct in case they're not watching at home for that one. So you say about the enforcement of it. At the moment, Wise would not be with dog fouling. They won't be going onto the land that isn't maintained, i.e., the new developments to enforce on our behalf. That's not Borough Council land, but the PSPO that were in place, and they would be able to go on that land. Can you just confirm if that's correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, so just want to put that in context for people who might watch there. Thank you, Jeff. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the very detailed presentations that we've had. I've got actually 4 questions, one of my own and 3 that are of residents' interest. The first one is, do Wise go around detecting their own issues, or are they dependent on Streetwise reporting to them? So it's the relationship between the two really that I'd appreciate clarification on. Perhaps if you could deal with that first, and then I'll come on to the other 3.
Sure, for sure. So in terms of fly tipping, which is their focus, they will be reporting and investigating every reported fly tip that comes through to the council. That said, they are eyes and ears in the borough as well. So they're not going to turn a blind eye to something if they see it at first hand. They're fitted with body cameras, dashboard cams, and the rest of it. So if they see an offence, I'm sure they'll be more than keen to deal with it on the spot.
Okay, thank you. The things that are more of interest to residents that I'm aware of is, firstly, from the litter bins, the rubbish bins that we have many around the borough, what happens to them? Do they go to the incinerator or do they go to landfill? That's one question. The second is, regularly there are large amounts of litter blown across Loughborough Road from Asda, and also on the shopping precinct at the Wolds. Is it their responsibility or the borough's responsibility to clear those? And my last point is there scope for in some way recognising and encouraging private citizens litter picking? And by way of illustration, my wife and I have been litter picking quite a bit over the last 12 months. People on our road committee have organised litter picks. On a walk recently, I came across 3 people with litter pickers and really heavy bags, some from Compton Acres who were litter picking in Edwalton and putting bags in their cars. The Friends of Sharp Hill Wood regularly bring back rubbish, broken bottles and goodness knows what from parties in the wood. So there is a huge amount of voluntary effort, and I just wonder in what way the council can promote that. So that's my 3 questions, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry, Rod. Jeff, is there anything you want? If you can bring those points.
Chair, I'm quite
no, sorry. Again, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one again. You see, I say you look to the moment to like, but I don't know one of them get offended and report me, so I better not. So just bringing Darryl.
Dog fouling, Jeff, litter me is probably the simplest scenario for this evening. Yeah, thank you for the questions. The first one with regards to litter that's emptied in the litter bins, that's all incinerated, so none of it will go to landfill. The second question, we are aware of the hedge at Asda, and it's actually litter picked on a daily basis. We do try and work with Asda as best we can to sort of make them responsible as well, and that's something we try and do with a number of retailers, but it's a bit of a wind trap there. One of the problems with the parade of shops is it's privately owned, so it makes it more difficult for us to clean that as well. But the hedge is one that we do on a daily basis. The third question, Councillor Jones, in relation to litter picking groups, we do an awful lot of work working with Streetwise to support anyone that wants to get involved. And at the moment, it's quite difficult with the current pandemic. We don't want to be encouraging sort of groups to be out there mixing and litter picking. We do a lot of work with the town and parish councils and groups during the National Spring Clean. And we would encourage any sort of group that wants to speak with Streetwise, who can either loan them litter pickers, give them black bags, and also arrange for free collection of any rubbish they collect, and then we will make sure it's disposed of. So, and Streetwise are keeping a list of these community groups so that we can sort of help build and support them moving forward.
Right. The point really was that many of these people are individuals or individual couples. They're not groups. And it's really difficult to know whether to connect them with Streetwise, because like if they say, oh, we'll lend you one, there's not the sort of activity where you lend something. It's something that you keep on one side and you go out every month or so and happen to use. So it's just about encouraging people, if we want to encourage people indeed, but there's a lot of people doing it on their own.
We would actively encourage them to speak with Streetwise. It's something that Streetwise are very keen to get volunteers and not just groups, but individual volunteers as well, to sort of take more local ownership of the area.
Okay, and if I go on that point there, Councillor Jones, as well, because I have two groups of litter pickers in the Gampston area in my ward who go out there, and they're really thankful for Streetwise, the support they give in terms of collecting the rubbish when it's done and the initial support given. And so any group, and there's also a group in Abbey Park who we came all the way up to Basingfield at the weekend, and we're helping there to litter pick. And I know there's many other groups across the borough as well. I think what I echo the comments Darren made there, which is getting in contact with Streetwise and also your local council, because you might be able to give your local fund to purchase litter pickers and the high-vis jackets and other equipment you need. Obviously, we really appreciate the work that anyone does in terms of litter picking and helping the environment. We want to make sure you're safe doing so as well, and that we can give you the support from the experts and Streetwise to support them. And also at the same time, if you do catch anyone littering or fly tipping or dog fouling, to report it so we can get them, so to speak, and hopefully avoid that happening again. So thanks, Councillor Jones, for raising that point, because it's really that we need to put the record of thanks. I know these people, a lot of them don't do it for thanks, they do it because they care about the community, but it's really important we recognise the work that these people do for us on behalf of the community. So thank you very much. Laura, sorry, message from Laura there. I think I covered that. I think I got in before you there, Laura, but tell me if there's something else I missed. So that's great. So, Councillor Walker, see your hand up.
Thanks, Chair. Before I forget to say this, thank you for everybody who's been involved with the creation of the WISE trial. That's really positive step forward, and the numbers that we heard reported on Tuesday in terms of the number of fixed penalty notices that have been issued in a short space of time is testament to that. And I suppose it's on the dog fouling aspect. There's a couple of things here. I understand what Jeff said about the link between evidence and the PSPO. It's not whilst not disputing that, I think it's also fair to say that perhaps the number of service reports aren't necessarily the most accurate or ideal measure of the scale of the problem. And I would venture an assumption further that if people are going to, one of the reasons why there are high levels of reports for the fly tips is that people know that when they report it, Streetwise will come around and clear it up quickly. And they've got a very good and well-earned reputation for doing so. I think when it comes to dog fouling, we would all know and appreciate that reporting it isn't going to create that outcome of somebody coming around with a mop and bucket to clear it up. So why would you do it in the first place? Now, I don't have the answer for that, but I think let's not kind of trick ourselves into the view, if that were held, that because there are low levels of service reports, there is a low level of issues. And it does come down to enforcement. And that's the great thing. But I suppose it's highlighted in a way wise that having the ability to do it is going to create opportunities to prevent in future. Now, there was a good, I thought, and helpful comment made at the presentation on Tuesday that I think it would be right to be brought forward into this committee about the possibilities for the PSPO about enforcement in relation to possibly people, dog owners, being challenged as to whether they have the necessary bags and things to do them. I think here, like all types of enforcement, we ought to concentrate our efforts on transgressors rather than making life more difficult for the vast majority of people who do clear up after their animals, and let that also be said. So is that an option available to us to increase enforcement? And if so, how might we go about getting the evidence to tick the box that we need for the PSPO?
Councillor Walker, I think that's predominantly for Jeff on that item. If Jeff wants to come back, I'm sure, and Darryl if he needs to on the other part.
I think I heard two questions, Councillor Walker. The first being, can we expand the PSPO to cover things other than merely the failure to pick up after a dog? No, can we include it to require someone to have a dog bag, for example, and carry a bag with their dog? And the answer is yes, you can, and that is a practice that is, I believe, undertaken elsewhere. It makes enforcement interesting, but it's certainly an option. And in terms of the other question, I think was around, what was it, around consultation?
I thought Councillor Walker, there he is, he's back.
I think you've highlighted an issue in terms of evidencing the need for a PSPO, yes, by our potential lack of reports. And I suppose, yes, the background here being, I don't believe that, I understand the difficulty that you've got ticking that particular box, but how do we create the link between the issue that as members we all know, because we get the comments and we get the emails and we get the things, in translating that into what you would need?
Yes, I understand. And I agree with you. Service requests on their own don't necessarily paint the entire picture, which is why you'd go through an extensive consultation process with all the interested parties and stakeholders to try and create and engage. If a very high proportion of those stakeholders support the PSPO and the need for it, then that provides you with the evidence for it.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Jeff. I mean, on the point of the PSPO, I would raise that I am in favour myself of that, and as a recommendation this evening in terms of doing the work, consultation work. I understand it is a large piece of work and we're off to time, but I think as all councils can identify, it is a big issue. And the emails I get on it probably outweigh a lot of other issues, and especially on the newer estates. I'm sure councils have got those their areas as well as across the wider area. And I think, as you say, that people are reminded about the fact they need to carry the kit, because it's easy to do. You pick a different coat and you've not got the bags there and anything else. But perhaps they don't see there's any recourse from that, or they're going to be in trouble for that. But potentially, that extra fail safe of no, I've got to make sure I take bags out or anything else to pick up from the dog. Another council did raise the issue about the website report. I do see the website be updated and looks a lot more easy to report the issue about dog finding, which is great. And I do think, as the point we made earlier, if we're able to work with the communication team to put out that people can report the issues of dog finding, because I think it comes to that point, people will send a message on social media or Facebook groups about litter on the floor, but they don't really about dog finding as much. And we may get the emails for potentially building that awareness that people can report in dog finding more. Because we've got a great comms team, and if you're following on social media, we can put that out there. Would be really useful to see. Just in Councillor Amanda, sorry, I had hand up as well, so I'll stop waffling and bring Councillor Amanda first.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think it sounds a good sort of report and some interesting ways forward. I think that Councillor Walker and Councillor Jones have made some good points. I guess, like some of the people on this group, have had quite a few residents sending in various suggestions about, should the borough provide bags? Do we find people who don't carry the bags with them? and do we, well, just look at one, do we triple charge people for people who hang the bags in trees and shrubs around the place? Because, you know, as I say, there's the saying goes, there's no such thing as the poo fairy. And the number of people who take the bag and then just leave them hanging around the place is, I do not understand what is the mental process for that? You know, it's, take it home with you, for heaven's sake. So, you know, I think certainly there should be fines for that as well. And just on the previous issue about litter picking, I'd say thank you to Daryl and Dave for the support for the groups that I've been dealing with on that, like Friends of the Hook, Friends of Bridgeford Park. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Councilman, on that one. I think everyone agree the point. So when it's hanging trees next to the dog bins, that's what really gets me. Is say you go around there, like I say, you lose the will to live at that point with people. The extra effort to put it in there. But anyway, we'll be here all night to talk about that one, I think. So thank you for that, Councillor Williams.
Yeah, thank you. It was just got a couple more questions from. First one is just it was described about how look at Streetwise and they assessing the streets that are cleaned and with the grading system. Are they done kind of unannounced in a sense and chosen, or is it that there's no prior warning given, because we wouldn't want necessarily Streetwise to send out teams to go and make it to get a better grading. But also the other thing was just has the council looked at the new what has it done to look at the new technologies to try and with the bins that we got on Tuesday in the presentation that was really informative about like smart bins and that kind of thing, where perhaps like with the resources can be prioritized elsewhere with the use of technology. What technology is there to try and tackle littering and that kind of effect, or not littering, but like the collection of it and that kind of thing? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Daryl, would you mind just doing a quick 30 seconds about what the grading means? People don't think we hand out gold stars to people who are literally on the street. Thank you.
Yeah, so just two questions, I think quick answers for you. So the transect inspections we do them each month, and they basically cover, I think, both what you said. So they are random inspections of streets to sort of take a snapshot in time of what certain areas look like. And then we also combine those with our contract inspections that we do as Streetwise to make sure they're actually performing and sweeping the roads that they're supposed to be doing. So, and when we choose those roads, we try and pick a very wide-ranging selection. So it may include main roads, side streets, cul-de-sacs, car parks, etc. So it's a big cross-section. With regard to bins, one of the things we spoke about at the presentation was smart bins. So smart bins are, it's new technology. It's bins basically that will be able to record when the bin is, say, 2/3 full or 3/4 full, and it will send a notification back to the operative that the bin needs emptying. The idea of the smart bins is to save vans running around the borough and causing potential environmental issues running around emptying bins that aren't particularly needed to be emptied. So you can get to one bin and they may only be a quarter full. There's lots of other technology. You will see, if you go into the City Council, for instance, that they have solar powered bins that crush the rubbish. So again, it saves on the emptying cost. So a lot of the technology that we're looking at and working with Streetwise is to try and sort of look at how we can potentially save costs, save travelling when there's no need to. And yeah, that's a piece of work that we're going to be progressing over the next 12 months with Streetwise.
Thank you very much. I've got time's getting on, so Councilman, just bring in quickly before we sum up, if you've just got a quick point you want to make. Councilman Manander? Or is your hand still up from before? Okay, sorry, your hand's still appearing on the screen, that's why, sorry, on that one. Okay, so thank you very much. So in terms of recommendations went forward before, the recommendation is that it is recommended that councillors consider the report and provide feedback on the council's approach to tackling litter and dog fouling. As I said before, what I would like to add in the recommendation is that the council undertakes the feasibility study on introducing a PSPO on dog littering across the borough. I think that's a general enough recommendation to put in there, unless Dave tells us that I can't say that. I just want to get people's views on that as another recommendation. Oh, sorry, bring Dave first.
Sorry, Chair, I didn't quite catch the bit. So it's the PSPO to investigate the feasibility of introducing a public space protection order to better control dog fouling.
That sounds better than what I said, so we'll go with that, Dave. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the fundamental point.
And allied offences, because of course this is about identifying behaviours which are then criminalised. Yeah, so so it's important that we will review allied activities that we've just talked about. So, for example, the failure to actually carry an appropriate number of poo bags, as it were. So we'll investigate all those different associated elements.
Yeah, so that's what's a feasibility study. I do understand that there's going to be a lot of similar crossover work with other areas. I just want to make sure that it is right. We put that in place, because obviously we talk about it tonight, but we've not properly scrutinised that. It's something that's just come out of a presentation, so hopefully it gives you and the team enough time to go through that and to do a proper presentation back. Councillor Jones, did you have a comment on that?
Yeah, can we add that there should be more emphasis on getting the supermarkets to clear up their own rubbish? Because, you know, whether it be Morrison's or Asda or the other supermarkets, it's quite clear in their area, the rubbish, and I don't see why it should be the council's responsibility to pick up stuff that they're making profit out of.
And Darryl, on that point, Darryl, if you could comment, because I know you do a lot of work with I know especially the Edwalton, you're doing a lot of work recently. So
I do, so yeah, that's correct. Thanks, Chair. I'm more than happy to pick up those points in regard to the two big supermarkets. We did mention at the presentation that we're doing a lot of work with McDonald's and Edwalton at the moment to check what routes they're litter picking and stuff. Generally find supermarkets are normally quite forthcoming in doing their own litter patrols as well, because they don't like the bad publicity, but I'm quite happy to take those away and speak to the supermarkets again.
Yeah, thank you, Darren. I think actually use an example of McDonald's, because I drive past that route on the way home from work every day, and on the community, and to be fair, I've seen them out there doing the litter picking, whether it's the same the right routes needs or not. I've seen someone out in the high vis with the litter picking, looking like he's been given a horrible job for telling his manager off or something at some point, but he's been out there, or the woman's been out there as well, doing it as well. So I think absolutely it's right to look at a piece of work. So Councillor Jones, if you're okay with that, Darryl will be looking at that work there, and can also comment back if we go through this item again. So thank you very much. So there's now two recommendations. So rather than doing the run, is anyone going to be against the two recommendations that we've set out there? Any abstentions? So if everyone's okay, it has carried unanimously on both those recommendations. So thank you very much, and thank you once again to the officer team. It was remiss of me not to thank Peter Linfield, who I know sloped off as soon as we got the opportunity after the last item. So we record our thanks in the minutes for Peter for his presentation as well this evening. So I'm not sure if anyone's staying around on the officer team. If not, thank you very much for your time tonight. So we've got the final item, and thank you to Jeffy. Okay, you go off, Jeff, tonight. And to you, Darryl, thank you very much. So we've got Leanne and Sam who are joining us. So thank you very much for sticking with us, Leanne and Sam. Like I say, you don't get this entertainment watching the TV on the evening. So thank you very much. And I will hand over to Leanne to introduce the item, unless someone tells me differently.
Hello, thank you, Chair. I'm just trying to turn my and it's saying it's disconnected. It was connected earlier, but now it appears to be disconnected. So apologies about that. Can you hear me okay? Yes.
Yeah, I can. If everyone else can. Everyone put hand up. Yeah.
Thank you. So just before I hand over to Sam Mayer, who's going to take you through the report, I just wanted to explain the approach that we've taken, because it is a departure from the way we've done it in the past. So the scheme that we've prepared sets out a streamlined and strategic vision with key principles and themes, setting out the equality, our approach to equality in our organisation, and how we use it to serve our community as well. So we've taken this high-level strategic approach to make it more relevant and adaptable and accessible, because we've made it a shorter document so it's easier to read and gives you a sharper focus on how Rushcliffe defines equality and diversity, and then embeds it throughout the organisation. So sitting below those high-level overarching principles, we have a series of action plans and that looks to provide the detail and turn those principles into action. So you can see how that then flows through the organisation. So the other benefit of taking this approach is that it means it won't get out of date. That was something that you raised when we presented to you in the summer last year. In the previous scheme was very outdated. So the benefit of this is it's a live document, and we'll review those action plans annually with focus groups, so that it's always a live and relevant document. So we're looking to you tonight in this committee to consider the themes that we've set out in the scheme and whether they resonate with your perception of equality, diversity, inclusion. So I'll hand over to Sam. Thank you.
Hi Sam, welcome back.
Thank you very much. So back in August, it was really good to get your feedback and your views as to what you think the new equality scheme should look like. And I think some of the key things that you fed back to me then are sort of set out at paragraph 4.3. And so we've tried to address that within this new approach. So you referred to the previous document being quite out of date and not necessarily representing the local community. So we want to make sure that the new strategy, we're going to work with the communications team to make sure that the document itself is more accessible and also reflects the community of today. And then also there was a lot of feedback about how you wanted to see the document as being something living rather than something that's on a shelf. And there was also a focus around action and wanting to know that actions were being taken and monitored. So that's why we've got sort of a two-step approach. So there's an overall strategic document, which is the scheme, and then there will be annual action plans that will bring that scheme to life. And those action plans will be subject to consultation. Given and that was one of the other points of your feedback, was that strong preference to make sure that we were consulting with the groups that this policy is all about and the scheme is all about. Within the context of COVID, it's quite difficult to carry out meaningful consultation with the restrictions in place currently. And but in terms of the action plans, we will be able to do that. And the action plans will mean that they'll be timely and they will reflect the priorities of the people that the actions are there to support in a much more relevant way. What we've also done is, because the other thing that I picked up from you was about your desire to make sure that the scheme represented everybody within your wards and the whole borough. And so that's why we've included a focus around the idea of inclusion, so that the scheme itself doesn't just focus on people with protected characteristics. It's got to have meaning and relevance for everybody. So we've got that as a feature within the scheme as well. And then finally, I was conscious that you wanted to know really what steps have been taken to put equalities foremost and as an outcome of the previous scheme. And so what we wanted to do is just to give you a reflection of those. And so those are set out in the appendix. So you've got there a sense of the actions that have been taken and are being taken at the moment to support equality and diversity at the local authority. So this is sort of really to update you on the work that we've been doing to try to reflect what you wanted to see as part of the equality scheme. And I know that you were keen to sort of have this sense checked to let us know, are we on the right track? And to be assured, I think, that we had taken your points on board. And you'll see in paragraph 4.9, so those key points that we want to make sure are reflected within the action plan. And those were the themes that we discussed. And I think you said that they'd resonated with you in August, but they're repeated here really, of the key things that we're going to make sure are reflected within the first action plan that will be underpinning the equality scheme for this year. So those are the main things that we will incorporate, as well as from an organisational point of view, we've got a people strategy, and there's an equality, diversity and inclusion strand to that, which also has its own action plan. So I just wanted to sort of outline really the approach that we're taking, and we'll be happy to take any questions.
That's great. Thank you very much, Sam. And just for context, on you may be watching online in terms of why we're mentioning August. So the item originally came to us in August, and the feedback from the group was wanted just to get a bit more meat on the bone and give some feedback for Sam and the team to go back and work on and come back with us on, which you have done, and we very much appreciate. And I think it's a real testament to this committee that it'd be easy for us just to tick the box and yep, we agree, and just say we've done our job. But actually, we scrutinised as we should do, fed back, we'd like to see more to it, and obviously it's come back to tonight. So I think it's a great testament to everyone's committee for the work done last time, and again for Sam as well for taking our board, not going as horrible councillors. I'll just bring up the same thing and with a bow on top, but actually taking our views on board and coming back with this document tonight. So thank you very much for that, Sam, as well. So hands up, it's like the fastest finger first. I think that's from Millionaire. Anyone got their hands up on this item? I'm not having any appear on my screen. Oh, Councillor Jones, there you go. I was getting disappointed there, Councillor Jones, so thank you very much for that.
Well, I don't know what other people thought. I mean, I accept the point about high level, but it felt very high level to me in terms of not totally connected to the ground. And what I didn't, I mean, maybe I missed something, but I thought we were looking for some identification of characteristics which would be monitored and reviewed about inclusivity, ethnicity, disability, learning disability, single parents, gender, maybe even child poverty, I don't know. But I thought we were looking for performance indicators almost, or performance measures, which the action would come against. Maybe I missed something, but I don't know what other councillors think, but that's my comment. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry.
Would you like me to sort of comment back on that, Chair?
Yeah, so I did the thing, I decided to mute myself, which people probably wish I'd done that all night, but I just did just then. Sorry about that. So, yep, Sam, if you could come back on that point, we very much appreciate it.
Okay, so that point has been, I think, taken on board because the commitments within the scheme itself, for example, has got indicators in it. So we've got a commitment about understanding our community. And so one of the indicators around that is to gather and analyse diversity data and to understand where action is needed to be taken. So, and we will also be doing the practices that we have been in terms of monitoring our own workforce and also monitoring in terms of how that reflects the community. We do have the census that's due to take place in the coming year, and so that's going to provide us with rich information on the current population within the borough, and so we want to sort of take note of that as well. So I do think that the point has been covered within the document, but it might not be so obvious in terms of where it sits.
Yeah, I think on that point, Sam, if when that goes to Cabinet House, if that point, Councillor Jones can be looked at to make sure it is clear, because obviously if there's councillors we're struggling to see it, members of the public will probably struggle even more to see it if they're not used to that. So I think it's a definitely point Councillor Jones raised. If you can just look at that when it's planned, it will be much appreciated on that one. And of course, with these action plans in place, Councillor Jones, we can then obviously bring back and scrutinise the report, or instead of just scrutinising the overall report, going where are we up to, we've actually got specific aims in an action plan to say, right, on then, how have you met those action points? We can do that
Exactly.
on a yearly or 2 yearly basis. But does that cover, Councillor Jones?
Yeah, it's just that my understanding is, you know, if you look at other equality policies and reports, there's quite often some very key performance measures, basically, or performance criteria, and I just think that this report should be should add what those are. You know, equalities isn't my specialism, but I'm aware of many reports that and many councils that have very specific criteria that they will be looking at in terms of services and staffing.
No, absolutely, Councillor. I think and the whole point tonight is that comment's taken on board by Sam, I know absolutely from that, and we will make sure that that's included in the report that goes to Cabinet. And we, of course, can scrutinise that back, I say, next year, 6 months, 18 months to make sure that's included. But just take your point on board. I think to bring this piece of work back from August to now, with all those plans in place, it probably wasn't possible, which is why Sam and Leanne and the team have put together this report of the overall strategic aims and where the action plans are going to be in terms of taking the themes on board that we've said, and that's been from the previous report. So that will go to Cabinet, and as I say, then with our recommendations as part of that. And as I say, we then bring it back if we don't think that plan is meeting what we set out tonight and what we scrutinise and what Cabinet agrees to ultimately when it goes there. Sam, tell me if I'm wrong there at all. So just means Sam knows that. Take that board, Sam. Yep, great. Thank you, Councillor Jane.
Chair, sorry. Could I just comment? Sorry, without having my video, it's a bit.
Sorry, I didn't see you. I didn't see it.
No, I apologise. I can't get it to work. I've looked at my settings anyway. I just wanted to say that this is really a bigger opportunity than looking at outputs in terms of some performance indicators. This is an opportunity for you to shape the way we look at equality in the organisation and how we shape equality with our residents and with our community. So as Councillor Wheeler has said, and also Sam, you know, the detail about how we report on individual data comes later when we start reporting on this document. But here's a real opportunity for you to shape what that equality document looks like. You know, have we covered all the bases with these themes? Is there anything that we've missed? Is there an angle that we've missed? That's really what we would value your input on as well. And of course, in terms of diversity and how our organisation is represented compared with the community, etc., those things are captured in our diversity report, which are reported to the corporate overview group. So they're captured in a different way, but all hanging off this equality scheme. So it's important that we get this equality scheme right, and then from this we will develop all the action plans and the performance indicators, and that all flows from this document.
Great, thank you, Leanne. Does that cover the point, Councillor? Thank you very much. Next on the list is Councillor Walker.
Thanks, thanks, Chair. And I think I'm with Councillor Jones on this, and I'm on the verge of perhaps being a bit less polite than he was. I don't really see where this has progressed since August. I've read the report or the kind of high level strategy. I see a lot of buzzwords. I don't really understand what it actually says, what it actually means. Now, I take the point so far that okay, the actions will come afterwards, but this, to me, really doesn't say anything at all. So look, I'm happy to have my mind changed, but I feel like we're in exactly the same place as we were in August, and what has happened since then and now.
Okay, that's Councillor Walker. We're just bringing Sam first for the comments on that one, or Leanne. Sam, do you want to say anything first, then perhaps bring Leanne?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Walker. I think apart from sort of repeating what I've just said, really, you know, it is isn't just buzzwords on a page. It's setting out how we are defining equality and diversity at Rushcliffe, how that's embedded in the organisation, and how it is a strand that goes through everything we do. And if you look at the appendix there, you'll see examples of how that is acted on. So things that we do that directly relate to how we view and perceive equality. I think what I'm hearing is that you want to see some detail, and you want to see some numbers, and you want to see some data, and you want to see some information about how we are performing. But this is setting the strategy. And so all of that comes after, and we can report back to you on all of that after we've had this policy in place for a year, as we would with other policies. So what I'm saying to you really is, I hear what you're saying, and yes, we do need to monitor this report, this scheme, see how it works in practice, get that data, and we can bring that back to you in 12 months after this policy has been in place. And that's how other schemes and policies work. We can't give you the data before we've got the scheme in place. So really what I'm asking you for is, we've got 4 themes here, and under each of those 4 themes, we're saying this is what we define equality to be. This is how we're going to put it into practice. This is how important we think it is, not only within our organisation, but also how we engage with our community and how they can access our services. So have we got that bit right? So once we've established that we've got that bit right and we haven't missed anything, or we haven't missed an angle, then we can have this in place. We can work up the action plans with our focus groups, which we've not been able to do because of COVID. And then we can report back to you in 12 months what the outcome of this scheme is.
Yeah, thanks, Leanne. I think, I do understand what you're saying, Councillor Walker. I think what we set out at the start of the report, what Leanne did, and as you say there, we haven't got a physical report in front of us, because like I say, the whole point is we scrutinise the old report, which we obviously looked at and commented that it wasn't fit for purpose. We then gave the feedback last time what we wanted to see in a new report. Sam and the team have worked on, in terms of what we said, into the aims and strategy overall, which we've seen in part of the report, and the main point around the action plans. I think what was really pertinent, we said last time, was how we couldn't scrutinise the old report because there were no real actions to scrutinise against. We just scrutinised. We thought it didn't look good, and it was too clunky and was on a shelf. We couldn't actually give proper scrutiny of that item was wrong. We didn't meet that target. And so hopefully what I've seen of the report there and the actions, and from Sam's and Leanne's wording tonight, is that's been taken on board. That will be included in the report that goes to Cabinet with the actual strategy. Then what we will do, absolutely, Councillor Walker, is bring this back in a year's time and say, right, that was your action plan for last year. Have you met these targets? If we haven't, we scrutinise why and recommend actions back up the food chain, as we say, to go in place. So I think that's where, again, the officers, feel free to tell me if I'm talking rubbish there, absolutely, but that's how I've seen it. That's, so just bring the other councillors first, Councillor Walker, see if anyone's got the same points outlined. If you want to come back at the end, can do. So in the order I had Councillor Williams' hand up. Was that an error, Councillor Williams? Because it's just disappeared. Okay, that's fine. So it's
No, you made my point.
Oh, you see, I've been with a check tonight. I can go home now. Thank you very much for that. So Councillor Mallender, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's a rather more specific thing. I was looking through the appendices, and there's a part there. It's in part 3, sorry, Appendix 1, part 3, where it says working in partnership to achieve impact and working with key partners and so on. And I was wondering who those might be. Just to run through a few bits and pieces on this from a couple of different points of view. For example, I've had in the past issues with people seeking help from housing association who have learning disabilities, and I would have thought that would be the kind of thing that, so it is Metropolitan and the other, who are they now, Metropolitan Thames Valley, is that one of the partners? And also a long time ago there used to be a thing called Rushcliffe Race Awareness Forum, and that worked with the borough, the county, the police, fire and rescue, what is now the health authorities, Rushcliffe Homes, 50+ forum. So we did, over a variety of different things, work with quite a wide variety of partners. I was wondering, so who are the ones that we're working with on this?
Sorry. Yeah, so I think an example of a current project is where, so there's the government Kickstart scheme, which is to fund work experience placements for young people. And for that, employers have got to offer 30 placements. So it's for an organisation the size of Rushcliffe, it's quite difficult to do that, but we could do that with partners. So we're working with other councils across the region to coordinate the placements to reach that threshold, and therefore then able to offer work experience placements for young people who are at risk of long-term unemployment, and to provide support for them with employability. So I suppose that's an example of a current issue, but it's I think it's about being open to working with a range of different partners, be it the county or other partners within the borough, so that we can work together to maximise the impact we might have, and seize on opportunities of sharing resources in order to improve outcomes for people.
And Richard, sorry, before I make a point of bringing Dave quickly, his hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Unfortunately, my virtual hand has stopped working. I think it's probably because my computer's been on since 8 o'clock this morning. Derek Hayden is a mine of information about community groups, and has been provided a lot of support to Leanne and Sam in terms of this report preparation. And so, unfortunately, the forum that Councillor Mallender refers to no longer exists, but there's a whole range of other groups now which Derek has provided contacts for, which we can hook into.
Okay, I was just trying to get some sense of who all these groups were, and yeah, that you're quite right. That one, that particular group is long since defunct. Indeed, the email that I found from 2007 included a link to Rushcliffe Homes, so it's quite out of date. But the point is that a lot of these groups have got successor groups that are still out there. Yeah. I was really seeking some kind of assurance that we're actually talking to that kind of set of groups still.
Yeah.
And hopefully, Sam, if you take that on board with the report, maybe giving some examples of what partner organisations would be great, just to build on as well for that. There, I would say as well, with my other hat on, I sit on the personnel committee at the county council, and I do know that they'd absolutely be happy to work with us, Borough Council, on around the quality sign, especially on employment, because county council part the Kickstart scheme and is going to be one of the hubs. So that means other businesses or councils can attach on, don't have to put all their front up costs, but can work together to potentially look at potentially bring people in employment to perhaps wouldn't get employment through regular channels, need that extra support. I know that support is in place, so perhaps just want to look at as well, Sam, if not already doing, that'd be great. So thank you very much. And Councillor Jones, we want to come back on point.
Yeah, I simply wanted to say I wasn't expecting data to be, Leanne implied that. I wasn't expecting data to be in this document, but I was expecting almost a checklist or the criteria from, age, gender, ethnicity, and so on, just so that each of the dimensions that are possible are in the wider document. But I just wanted to clarify that was my point. Thank you.
Of course, thanks, Councillor Jones. I know Sam's making notes now, and I'm sure endeavour to get that included in the report. That's again the whole point of tonight. We feed that back what we'd like to see in the report, and Sam and Leanne are also going to take that back and feed that into what goes to Cabinet again. And as I said before, we'll bring it back to ourselves and look at to make sure that feedback's been taken on board and has been met. So thank you very much. Councillor Williams, did I not cover your point there? Your hands back up. Oh, and down again.
I got a different point and questions to ask about from what Councillor Walker and Councillor Jones have asked them. I understand that in a year's time we're going to come back and review this document and look at what and how it's worked and that in the year. Is anything going to be coming to scrutiny on what areas it's going to look at because I hate to think that we had with the last document, when that came to scrutiny, we weren't able to analyse or to look at how it performed. And we're trying to develop a document here and a scheme that actually we've got no kind of reference from the old one, apart from it as you outlined, Councillor Wheeler. It wasn't fit for purpose, and there's nothing that we've kind of, from my understanding, gained from that document to then basis for this one. And I just wouldn't want to go for another year, and for us to then go, well, actually, we could we have looked at that? And it's just making kind of sure that we are looking at all areas to make sure that what the council are doing for the community and staff, that they're making sure that it is fit for purpose in the scheme, and then reviewing it and making alterations. Just wondering if that's going to happen.
Sorry, should I just come in quickly on that? Sorry, I can't put my hand up or anything at the moment. I do apologise. Yeah, just I think to say on that we have got the themes, and from that we're going to set out a number of actions that we're following from this, that we can then report on the the outputs of those actions, if you like. But if there's anything in particular, any specific area of focus that you want us to report back to you on in 12 months, then please do let us know, and we can make sure we capture that. And that's part of the reason why we're here talking to you about, what is it in particular that you would like to make sure that we capture and don't miss in this document. So, I've already sort of mentioned some of the things that we already record and report through diversity reports. And, so if there's any specific data that you're looking for, let us know. And we can make sure that we capture that, and we have a whole 12 months worth of embedding that in place. Otherwise, we'll be building on those themes that are in the scheme, and that will be sort of top to bottom of the organisation, and to be sort of very broad in its application. But if there is anything specific, then do let us know.
I think what would be best is, rather than putting people on the spot tonight and perhaps not putting across something they want to, if councillors want to properly go away again and look at that, and if there's things they want to see, as the answer there, let's put that in, because that's not something that's been public domain now. That's going to be a public domain that will go to that report to cabinet, and that we will scrutinise a year's time. Have that discussion, with yourselves, with fellow councillors in your group, and put that feedback into Leanne and Sam. I'm sure they'll take that on board and look at the report. And I will speak to the portfolio holder as well, taking all the brilliant things we said tonight from a political point of view, so to speak, council point of view, of what we'd like to see in that report then to cabinet. So you can liaise with Leanne and Sam as well before that report is published for cabinet. Is everyone okay with that? Any other comments people want to make? Okay, so we've got our recommendation, which I think my screensaver's now jumped on after all that time to look at, which so it is recommended that the community scrutiny group note the report and support the proposed approach for the revised equality scheme for submission to cabinet. So I think tonight we have, gone through the report, not only noted, we've given a lot of feedback back, which I know Sam and Leanne will take away, and thank you for your participation with that tonight, and to being so open for all the comments we're making this evening. And we support the proposed approach, and I think the approach, what we set up there, is around the strategic action plans, which Sam's already mentioned. The actions will be there. The approach that we've said about what ultimately the council wants to do, which is, we recognise we are a good council in terms of for equalities where we certainly are now, but we understand as well we can't sit still. We need to make sure that we keep evolving and changing with the times, and that's why with this document we've asked these action plans, because it can quickly go out of date, an equalities plan, as we saw with the last plan, which I'm sure was the council looked at beforehand and thought that was up to date where it needed to be, and we looked and went, hang on a minute, that looks like it's over 10 years ago, not 4 or 5. So I think the approach that we've set up this evening to the Sam and Leanne will avoid a repeat of that. And as I said before, it's up to this committee. We can bring it back in a year's time. We reckon 18 months' time. We bring it back when we choose to. That's the whole point of scrutiny and the matrix and the corporate overview group that myself, Councillor Mansell, sits on. We will make that representation on behalf of the committee as well to bring that back and to look at. And so if everyone is okay with that, what we've said through tonight, to me, we have met that recommendation from the broad stroke. Everyone saying tonight we are in support of the approach to it. Bear in mind, as we said before, the detail isn't there because of what's already been said tonight, and will be put together for the report for Cabinet. So is anyone against that recommendation? Anyone abstaining? So I'm going to take that as unanimously carried. So thank you very much. And Sam and Leanne, thank you very much for being with us tonight and being at such a late hour. Very much appreciate them for the work you've done, and look forward to speaking to you again when we bring this back. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, we're nearly there, people. We're nearly there. Last item, which is the work programme. So I shall bring in David, unless he's going to say is whenever tool's gone down on the computer, it's in there strong.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so one meeting left of the current cycle, so 29th of April. We've already got on the books the carbon management plan, which will be the sort of annual review of that work. There are 2 or 3 other items as well, which currently have scrutiny matrices completed for, which will be taken to the corporate overview group in March. However, we are very conscious, obviously, of the elections in May, which still look like they're going to be going ahead. So that will be the county council elections and indeed the police and crime commissioner elections as well. So one of the items, for example, is around sort of police resourcing and linked to community safety. So if obviously from a PERDA point of view, it might not be appropriate or wise to bring that particular item. So we'll clarify in the coming weeks what's appropriate to bring in addition to the carbon management plan for that particular meeting and liaison with corporate overview group. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Stephen. And for anyone watching online who goes, what we're on about with PERDA, that basically means before an election period that we can't really discuss him that's going to fundamentally change policy or basically write our manifesto in sense by any party by putting items forward. It's designed to be fair, and so that's why it was set out with the police and the community aspect, which I put through the matrix. I really want to bring to this committee so we can look at the resources that are being spent across the borough in terms of policing and other blue light services to scrutinise that's effective. As David said, if that election goes ahead in May, which as it stands it still is, we'll find out May the 4th it isn't probably, but as a minute it is, so we can't bring that item. So is everyone happy with at the moment this item there? But we are going to have to bear in mind, like I said, the PERDA period and look at what items that we can. The last thing we want to do is bring an item that we can't properly scrutinise for the whole point as David set out with PERDA. So at the moment it's carbon management plan, which again we obviously covered in great detail in our first meeting, and we'll look at again. So anyone who wants to make any comments on the work programme where we are, or trust that myself and Councillor Mansell will look at the overview group and bring forward the items in conjunction with that committee that we're able to do so.
Chair, I think that's fine from my point of view. I'm not sure about the others.
Great, thank you. I'm not seeing anyone waving at me to obscene gestures. I'm taking that as a good point for that one. So if everyone's in favour, we'll Councillor Walker, yeah.
Did we just say we would look at having the quality thing back in a year?
Yeah, I mean, the whole point now is if that's what people want, absolutely, because we'll put that through the overview group. If the format stays the same as scrutiny, which it is at the moment, we can bring that back in a year. If everyone on the committee would like that to happen, we'll make sure that goes as part of the work programme when we look at the next cycle of the next cycle of items, which will be the next meeting. So if everyone's in favour of that, absolutely, we can bring it back in a year. I say a year, I just need to check when it's going to Cabinet, because that's me. If it goes to Cabinet in 9 months, I'm not really back in a year because it wouldn't have had time to properly scrutinise. So we say a year in principle, but we'll obviously look at when it goes to the item. Then what we can do at the next.
I'll just voice at this stage then, given how, I'm sorry to say it again, but given how little appears to have actually happened since the last meeting with it, I would think that there's the possibility here that I can foresee quite a lot of long grass in the horizon into which this may be kicked, and I don't think that should happen.
I see your point, Councillor Ward. I think everyone has said tonight, I think the principle I've got from everyone is we're not going to let that happen. We are going to bring it back in a year, and I'm sure the officers, well, I know David has taken that away, and I know that Leanne and Sam have that, knowing that we want this back in a year in principle, obviously maybe a bit longer depending when it goes to Cabinet, but after a year of being in effect, I think it's the right wording to use. and we'll make sure that that is properly scrutinised. That's what we're here to do. It's our choice as a committee if we want to bring that item back. And you said long grass. I don't think it will. Myself personally, I think the OSCE team know how important we take this, and I know how important they take it. And I'll speak to the portfolio holder as well to make sure that point is across as well. So, like I said, I know everyone's view is that we don't want this to be another document we look at 4 years and go, oh, what happened there? We want it to be a living document, to paraphrase the term we used so often tonight. And that's what we're here as a committee. We'll decide it comes back, and myself, Councillor Bansal, the entire wrong Councillor Bansal, but we'll make sure we make that case at the OFU group for the work programme to bring that back. Is that okay with yourself, Councillor Walker?
Can I just say, in support of Councillor Walker's point, this was high level. It was getting towards stratosphere, and I think if it comes back, it needs to get a little bit nearer the ground. Well, or the supplementary part of the report needs to be nearer the ground. In the way we've talked about with criteria more specifically. Thank you.
Absolutely, Councillor Jones. To hit the point on board, I think David and Leanne as well, that's why we said about the action plans. That's why those can be put in place as part of it, and that's what we can actually hold to account. Whereas at the moment we couldn't before because there was nothing specific to say you've not made that action. But the action plan will go to be part of this report that goes to Cabinet, and I say we will bring that back, and in a way that's best for us because there will actually be an action plan that we can scrutinise. And so I completely get your point about high level view. That's where we have been in terms of getting the strategy involved. Or what we would like to see in part of the strategy, but we will not be high level when it comes back to scrutinising the actions, because we'll have something clear in front of us of the actions and the evidence to show if the actions been met or not, and knowing how good this committee is at holding the reports account and making comments. I've got absolute faith that we'll when that comes back, we will we all as a committee will scrutinise that effectively, and the officers, I know, as I say again, I'm repeating myself, but I know they've taken that on board, what we said here tonight. And again, I will have a conversation with officers as well, with the portfolio holder as well, just to reinforce that point, so they know the point when it comes to the item being prepared for Cabinet. Are you okay with that? Okay, great. So, Councillor Mann, is your hand stuck from before? Or
No. I was just going to follow up on that just very briefly. Does it? We were saying it goes to Cabinet. Does it go to full council as well after that, or does it just go to Cabinet?
Goes to Cabinet, I believe, unless David tell me if I'm wrong. Yeah, it's going to Cabinet.
Okay, right. Okay, so I was just trying to think. Is it not a year from now? Would it be a year from when it's agreed or when it goes to Cabinet? But there isn't another bit before it gets. Okay, right. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, no, I think, like I say, I think what will be best. Again, people, this is you to tell me if you want it differently. But I think a year from when it's in place, like I say, we want to get the proper amount of evidence. Like I say, if it's in place 3 months, we go, you're not met that. They're going to say, well, you're going to give us 3 months. That's why it's not there yet. So that's what I want to look at. But again, at the same time, with the way the scrutiny process works in the work programme, if it gets to 3 months in and you desperately want to bring it back because you don't think straight away it's not meet that point, we can ask for it to go on the work programme. Nothing is set in stone. It's an evolving process that we as councillors and the committee can decide to ask for it to come back at a different form. And as I say, again, you tell us as a committee, and myself and Councillor Bansal as your representatives on overview will make that case on the work programme to come back at a different time if we so decide. So yeah, nothing set in stone, but I think to me the best way is a year after it's implemented, so we get the proper evidence and a proper like I said, so we can probably see where we are rather than a tick box say after 3 months, oh yeah, you're meeting that. Well, a year is a good length of time to start with, and after that we can decide if we want it 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, a year, 18 months, 6.5 years, where we decide. I think that'll be best after the year. I'll stick. Is that okay? Right, I think everyone seems to agree with that. So if everyone's in favour of that, for the work, anyone against the work programme, what we said tonight? Any abstentions? So I'll take that as carried. I know it's been a long night, and to anyone who's still watching with us, well done, and thank you for your participation this evening. And like I say, for everyone here this evening, really do appreciate the time you put in this evening and the debates had. It's I think as a scrutiny group, we really do we do our job well, which is debate the items as we should do, put recommendations in and changes there. And I really thank everyone for the participation in that. And thank you once again to the officer team for your time tonight. I know you probably had a full day in with us as well this evening, so it's very much appreciated. And I shall see you all virtually in March. So again, thank you very much, everyone, and have a good evening, good rest of the evening, or thank you very much.